Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, we got a lot to talk about. Matthew Cortland will be joining us. He's a senior fellow at Data for Progress to discuss the Supplemental Security Income legislative and restorative efforts. Meanwhile, Louis Rossmann, founder of the Rossmann Repair Group, also a YouTuber, on the right to repair. Most recently in Joe Biden's executive order to deal with antitrust. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo, found by the New York State Attorney General of sexual harassment, breaching federal and state law on multiple occasions with up to 11 women. Calls for Cuomo's resignation reached the White House, and calls for impeachment throughout the New York Assembly. Good news, Biden administration extends the moratorium on evictions for 60 days, what amounts to a huge win for Cori Bush, the squad, progressives, and millions of renters. On the other hand, Nina Turner loses her special election congressional bid in Ohio's 11th district yesterday. A Trumpista won in the other Ohio special election. Back in Washington, the Senate nears that pivotal 60-vote threshold to finally end outstanding Iraq war authorizations reaching back almost 30 years. And with people scrambling now, worried about schooling in the fall with the Delta variant, the FDA looks to give Pfizer's vaccine final non-emergency approval within a month. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. I'm here, as always, with Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Sam.
Quite a day. We have a lot to talk about. Some of it is, some of it's a bummer. Some of it's very positive. We're going to talk about the Nina Turner race and try and get a sense of what's going on with that in the second half of the show. But we will get there. Obviously, that is a huge disappointment for the left. On the other hand, we have some great news. And, yesterday we were talking about Cori Bush, one of the newest members of the House. Probably, as new as any member of the House. Let's put it that way.
One of the newest members of the squad.
She is the newest member of the squad, or one of the newer ones. Again, one of the newest, right?
Yeah,
a couple came in.
Yeah, she came in with Mondaire Jones and
I don't think Mondaire Jones is specifically a member of the squad.
Okay, well, Jamal Bowman's a member of the squad.
Jamal
so,
Bowman
we're semantics here, fella.
Well, indeed. And, but all we do is we talk on the show. Anyway,
That's true. That's accurate.
Cori Bush literally camped out on the steps of the Capitol over the weekend to highlight the plight of potentially millions of Americans who are going to get evicted with the ending of the CDC eviction moratorium. The CDC issued this because it was a health requirement. The Supreme Court had looked at it about a month ago, said, we don't think this is constitutional. We're going to let it but it's expiring in a month, so we'll be okay with that, letting it expire. The Biden administration seemed to do nothing regarding it. It's unclear whether they even thought about it. Apparently, internally, they thought about extending it, but they were worried that if it went back to the Supreme Court, there might be some, other impact on other programs, or there might be a ruling that might inhibit the government's ability to do stuff in health emergencies in the future. The Biden administration threw it to Congress 2 days before they were about to leave the House. Nancy Pelosi, having received, and who knows if there's a direct correlation here, I don't know, but it's just one of the facts, a huge donation to her PAC from a massive real estate mogul. But nevertheless, I think everybody agreed there was no time for the House at that point to take it up. And there was a sense of like the White House had no plan. Cori Bush got out there. She whipped up public sentiment and a public outcry on the left. And it brought us to Joe Biden making this announcement at the White House yesterday about that moratorium, that they were going to extend it 60 days. But however, let's play that clip.
We're learning that your administration is about to announce a new partial eviction moratorium, COVID-related. Can you tell us any more about that, and are you sure it's going to pass Supreme Court muster?
The answer is twofold. One, I've sought out constitutional scholars to determine what is the best possibility that would come from executive action or the CDC's judgment. What could they do that was most likely to pass muster constitutionally? The bulk of the constitutional scholarship says that it's not likely to pass constitutional muster, number one. But there are several key scholars who think that it may, and it's worth the effort. But the present, the court's already ruled on the present eviction moratorium. So I think what you're going to see, and I want to make it clear. I told you I would not tell the Justice Department or the medical experts, the scientists, what they should say or do. So I don't want to get ahead. The CDC has to make this. I asked the CDC to go back and consider other options that may be available to them. You're going to hear from them what those other options are. I have been informed they're about to make a judgment as to potential other options. Whether that option will pass constitutional measure with this administration, I can't tell you. I don't know. There are a few scholars who say it will, and others who say it's not likely to. But at a minimum, by the time it gets litigated, it will probably give some additional time while we're getting that $45 billion out to people who are, in fact, behind in the rent and don't have the money. That's why it was.
That last point's the key point. But I mean, like, the problem with outsourcing all of this to scholars, which, you know, is seemingly his go-to, is that when you're not making your own case and you're making it about, oh, does this pass constitutional muster, you're completely muddying the waters politically for what you're trying to do. And two, like, I don't necessarily know what kicking the can to constitutional scholars does. It's just these people who are arguing over whether or not this very heavily politicized Supreme Court is going to side with you. Who cares? Who cares?
Well, that is
the last point is the first and only point that he should be making.
I mean, I think as a political matter, I would agree with you. However, one of the other elements of this is that it is going to go to the Supreme Court, and you do want to. I mean, the sad fact is, and this is a reality that people have to start to sort of like, I think, like, internalize. This is a 6-3 conservative court. They're a hostile, very hostile court. They are incredibly politicized, and I think what he's doing with that constitutional scholar, and I think like the accurate thing is not whether this is constitutional or not. That's not really the question. The question is it would the Supreme Court allow it to pass? And that's the real issue there. And so he's got to sort of tiptoe through this a little bit, because I think his audience there is the Supreme Court. He's going to let the progressives celebrate this and politicize it and make it and make some hay of it. But at the end of the day, who ultimately cares? The real issue here was mitigate the suffering of millions of people. And if this works, the 60 days gets them that rent relief, then, all the power to Joe Biden. That's why they had to pretend like we had to let it go, run out, because we have a new situation. It's a second thing, so maybe the court will look at it differently. That's all kabuki, and I'm convinced it's all for frankly, for Justice Kavanaugh, and that's just the world we live in. But we have more to talk about this, but we got to take a quick break. We'll be back with Matthew Cortland in just a moment. Got to race through this a little bit, folks. Oh, this is a good one. Emma, you'll appreciate this. As you know, summer's here, and living with swamp ass is not easy. Well,
why is it as you know?
Yes, as you know. Well, as you know, because I've said that so many times now. How do you deal with it? Well, you try a refreshing spray from a Hello Tushy bidet. You'll keep your self clean and fresh all summer long with the brand new Hello Tushy 3.0 modern bidet attachment. It is stylish. It is eco-friendly. It is super easy to install, and it even saves you money. Look, folks, I think everybody knows. I get a little embarrassed reading these. This is not my wheelhouse, as it were. But the product is really great. I got very bidet curious at one point over the COVID. These guys showed up coincidentally after Kyle had said, he had gotten a bidet. I was like, I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars to get a bidet. And these guys showed up, and it was a godsend. It attaches to your existing toilet. No electricity is needed. No extra plumbing needed. You cut your toilet paper use, and you start doing what people have been doing all around the world, which makes a lot more sense than the way that we do it in this country. I can tell you that. Well, I think in this country, actually, more and more people are doing it because of Hello Tushy. They have a 60-day risk-free guarantee. They have a 12-month warranty. And they have, like I say, millions of people have become happy Hello Tushy customers. Defeat your swampy ass. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Get 10% off plus free shipping. This is a special offer for our listeners at hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. hellotushy.com/majority. And also sponsoring the program today, ZipRecruiter at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. We got Brendan through ZipRecruiter, and in some ways, we got Bradley through ZipRecruiter because we got Bradley through Brendan. It works that way. Electricity. You get on the right track, folks. According to Forbes, gyms, nail salons, hotels, mom and pop stores, we get stores all across the country who are starting to gear up to get back into business. There's pent-up demand. People are going to be hiring. You got to be hiring quick. How do you do this? Well, ZipRecruiter. It is the fastest, the easiest, most organized way to do it. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. What happens is when you post a job on ZipRecruiter, they send your job to over 100 top job sites, gives you access to their network of millions of job seekers. ZipRecruiter's matching technology scans resumes. They find qualified candidates for your open roles, and then they proactively present them to you. You can easily review recommended candidates and invite your top choices to apply for your job which of course encourages them to apply faster. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority, MAJORITY. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter, it is the smartest way to hire. All right. And what is the sort of peak Sam Seder show? If Michael was here, he would be relentlessly, loving this and mocking me about it. I want to welcome our first guest to the program, Matthew Cortland. He is a fellow at the Data for Progress, and he does work on a host of things, but here today to talk about supplemental security income through Social Security. Matthew, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you both for having me. Thank you for giving a damn about impoverished disabled people in this country. I'm grateful. Not many folks do.
Well, I have long considered Social Security to be one of our greatest achievements as a nation, frankly, and one that I would have hoped would have be built on more over the course of the past 100 years that we've been living with it, 90 years some odd. But what gets very little attention and has been in the crosshairs in a way that Social Security in some ways can't be. I mean, Bush tried it in 2005. They call it the third rail of politics. But Social Security disability, the supplemental insurance, has been something that is not as prominent and has been under attack. Tell us about the history of that attack.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, just this is a confusing area, and I think it's confusing by design to make it hard for people to understand. There are two different programs. There's SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Insurance, and that's the program that on your paycheck, when they're pulling out those Social Security taxes, you're earning work credits, it's called, towards a day when you're not able to work because of a disability. You draw from those funds that you've paid into the system. For folks who aren't able to pay into the system, I got sick when I was about 8 years old, and I went to graduate school. I was able to do that, and then I got super sick. I hadn't earned any work credits. And the program for people like me is called SSI, or Supplemental Security Income. It's administered by the Social Security Administration. It's the other Social Security disability program. It's the one that has really been forgotten, in except when it's being attacked by sort of Trumpian Republicans. During the Trump years, we saw targeting of folks on both programs, really. They had a proposal that was going to require folks to go through what I call these "Are you still disabled enough" audits. The Social Security Administration says, give us all of your medical records, everything that you've got. We want to make sure that you haven't, this stuff gets real offensive real quick, so I've got to be careful how I talk about it, but that your cancer hasn't been miraculously cured, your inflammatory bowel disease hasn't been miraculously cured, that you're still a wheelchair user. They wanted to target folks for these reviews, these audits, as often as every year. And we're talking about folks who are also facing terminal illnesses. It was just the most ghoulish, offensive, Trumpian attack that you could imagine. And just to put this in context, the most that SSI will pay out to a disabled beneficiary is $794 a month. $794 a month. And that's not all. If you have more than $2,000 in savings as an individual, or $3,000 if you're married, you lose the program. If a friend or relative helps you out with either a place to stay or like a bag of groceries, you can lose up to a third of your benefit. A third of $794 a month just yanked away. If you get married to someone with more than $3,000 of assets, you lose SSI eligibility. If you happen to marry another SSI recipient, you don't get your $794 a month and they get their $794 a month. The feds take a quarter. You're married now, so you don't need as much money. Two disabled people living together, they don't need as much. They reduce the benefit. So it's just, SSI is a punishing sub-poverty existence that even as a lawyer who knows how to fight and who knows how to deal with these systems, my hands still shook in anxiety every time there was a letter from the Social Security Administration in my mailbox, because I knew this could be the day that they take away my $794 a month. That is all you are allowed to live on. So the Trumpian sort of universe wanted to attack folks struggling to survive on that $794 a month. And that's the maximum, by the way. The average benefit is much closer to $580 a month. There are over 1 million kids, by the way, who also get SSI benefits, in the Trumpian sort of attack really focused on those kids.
I just want people to sort of, stop and contemplate this asset rule, because it really is stunning. The idea that if you, I don't know how one would have, frankly, the ability to put away and save, even if you, but let's just assume for somebody like you've figured out how to live on $700, you get the maximum benefit, and you figured out how to live on $700 a month. It's not possible as an individual to live any type of like a life that we would expect people to be able to live in a civilized society. And you were to save, let's say, $90 a month. The idea that if you were to save up, for 2 years and have $2,000, that you would then lose this money. I mean, how do even people make a transition if they were in a position to make a transition off that? It's impossible to do. You have no like opportunity for any type of factor. Now we have also this type of asset thing on things like Medicaid as well in different states. That is an incredibly ghoulish. It's one thing to say like you can't have $1 million in a bank and do this, but it's another to say $2,000.
It's a poverty trap. You are exactly right. It is literally a poverty trap. The rules of the program force people to stay in poverty, unless you're going to love this, Sam. If you're really wealthy, if you're a millionaire or a billionaire and you have a disabled child, for example, you can hire a lawyer to draft special trust documents that allow them to get SSI benefits and have a big pot of money. If you have a lawyer, if you can pay tens of thousands of dollars for counsel and then pay a trustee. So it's a rigged system. Just, every other system in this country seems like it's rigged. This one is too. But if you are trapped in poverty, the 99.99% of SSI recipients are not the children of billionaires and millionaires. They are trapped in poverty because of the rule set of this program. And what's amazing right now is after a pandemic that disproportionately killed people in the disability community, Congress is finally, after decades, considering improving the program, improving SSI, making the benefit a bit more livable, so it's not so far below the federal poverty line, maybe increasing that asset limit. And I'm gonna do my call to action. You can join us in this one. You can text SSI NOW, sign SSI NOW to 50409, which is a ResistBot link. Our dear friends at ResistBot have helped out with the letter campaign to Congress. Say that one
more time, because
yes.
We're going to put that in the podcast and the show description and the YouTube description. So just say it one more time slowly.
Yep, it's you're going to text the word sign and then SSI NOW, all one word, SSI NOW to 50409, 50409.
So talk about the SSI Restoration Act then too, because what does this do? I know it's Raul Grijalva and someone who we're not necessarily flowery about on this program, Representative Slotkin. They're backing this. What would this do?
Yeah, there are actually a lot of folks now who are interested in SSI and improving SSI in the Hill. Ayanna Pressley has been a fierce champion. Representative Bowman has been a fierce champion. Senator Warren. I've spent the morning thinking about Virginia. Senator Warren, my senator from Massachusetts, Senator Sanders. There are a lot of folks now who on the Hill who are really paying attention and have for a long time to this issue of improving SSI. So the SSI Restoration Act is this piece of legislation that's on the shelf. It's ready to go. It can be part of budget reconciliation. Senator Schumer, I'm talking to you. It would do a bunch of good things. It would raise that $2,000 asset rule to something more reasonable, at least $10K. So you can have some savings when the Texas utility company turns off the power and you're a disabled person trying to struggle, like figure out how you're going to get through the night. Maybe you have a little bit of savings so you can go to a motel and not die. Maybe you're in the Pacific Northwest and you need to buy more masks to get through fire season, right? Increasing that asset limit. It would also increase the, right now you're allowed to, these numbers haven't been updated since I think the 70s. You're allowed to earn like $20 a month before they start penalizing you. Those numbers would be indexed to inflation so that things cost more. They just do every year. That's what inflation is. In this program, the asset limits and the amount that you're allowed to earn before you're penalized haven't kept pace with inflation. So it would increase those numbers to be in line with inflation. It would get rid of that rule that says if someone helps you out with a bag of groceries, and I got to tell you, I've been there as an SSI beneficiary when the cupboard was empty and my last $3 went to the Medicaid copay, the $3.65 copay for the medication that keeps me alive, and I didn't have any food. It would change the rule that penalizes people who get some mutual aid. It would eliminate that rule completely, and the same thing with housing. It would also just increase the amount of the benefit, because right now it's $794 a month, which is about 75% of the federal poverty line. It is not even level with the federal poverty line. It is below the federal poverty line. So for the 8 million Americans who rely on SSI, it would be a huge deal. I've got to tell you, I know it doesn't seem like a lot of money, jumping from 75% of the federal poverty line all the way up to 100% of the federal poverty line, but there were months that would have made my life a lot easier. I wouldn't have been worried about being houseless or not being able to buy the medications that literally keep me alive. So it's not a very expensive bill. We're not talking about a lot of money. There are about 8 million Americans who rely on this, and the SSDI Restoration Act would, in very real, meaningful, and concrete ways, make their lives, the lives of those 8 million people, including about 1 million kids, less horrific. Just, it's a hellscape trying to survive on SSI. And the SSI Restoration Act, which we can include in budget reconciliation, SSI can be fixed through budget reconciliation. SSDI can't, but SSI can. Senator Schumer, you've got a chance to improve the lives of 8 million Americans who are struggling to make it through the end of the month.
All right. Well, listen, Matthew, I know you have a heart out in literally 2 minutes, and I want to have you back on the show, so we can talk about this a little bit more in depth. But, the point is, folks can text, give it to us one more time, and I would include in that, we will also put in Chuck Schumer's number in the description so that people can call Chuck Schumer's office. It is sign SSI NOW to 50409. Call Chuck Schumer's office, tell him to put into the reconciliation bill the SSI Restoration Act of 2021. Matthew, I wish we had more time. I know you had this hard out, and we will do this again.
I appreciate it. I have to go do the chronically ill American in a pandemic thing and wait on hold with doctors' offices and insurers. I deeply appreciate the show in your audience, and thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate you too. And we will also put up your Twitter feed. People can follow you on Twitter as well.
Matt
Matthew,
BC. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. We're gonna hold on and see if we get Louis on today. Matthew had a hard out. Apologize for that. It was something that we couldn't avoid, but we will have him back on. Just got an IM from somebody said that in California, and I'm trying to find it now. Here it is. Sean from North California says, on a side note for the topic of the interview, the state of California sent out $600 checks to underprivileged residents. People on disability receive that money except for SSDI, It's not the same as we've been talking about here, SSI, except for SSDI recipients did not receive that money. I mean, I just contemplate the dynamic here. If you get help from people, if you get help from people, you suddenly are not eligible for 3/4 of the poverty line assistance by the federal government. I mean, it is just stunning. And so text sign SSI now, as in sign the bill, SIGN SSI now to 50409. You can get involved in that way. Also, call Chuck Schumer. If Chuck Schumer's office happens to be listening today, make sure this is in the bill. Schumer's Manhattan office is 212-486-4430. So check it out. Do we have Louis? Matt? Okay. All right. So joining us now, take a little bit of a turn to, again, this is something that I think Michael would have made fun of me for, because I am also a little bit of a fix-it myself. Louis Rossmann, he's the owner and founder of the Rossmann Repair Group. He's got a YouTube channel, and it focuses on being able to fix your stuff, which the right to repair has become, has sort of re-entered into the news in the wake of Joe Biden's executive order that he was going to ramp up antitrust things. Louis, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you taking the time.
The first thing I want to say is, do you accept interns? Because I want to apply. I did a little bit of this back in the day with VCRs, and I occasionally have rehabbed a lot of our computers in this in our office. And I think it's fantastic that you're sort of helping people to empower people to do this.
Well, we actually started offering workshops in the store, and I'm trying to do them about 2 or 3 times a week where people can come by for 2 to 3 hours, use the soldering equipment, the microscope, and the hot air station, and they can bring in anything they want to fix. So last week, we had someone show up with a broken Xbox, a CB radio, a Garmin GPS. Some of it we fixed, some of it we didn't, but I like having people come in on their own time to just be able to use the lab equipment if they don't have any at home. And yeah, we are actually, it's not an internship, but we are actually allowing people to just come in from time to time with stuff that doesn't work at a lot of times and be able to use the equipment here to do their own fix. And if they can't figure it out, then one of us will work with them and try to see if we can figure it out so that they can learn something.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, now let's talk about it in terms of, there's obviously environmental reasons why you do that. There's a whole host of reasons why you would do that. But let's talk about the ability to do that and how this sort of this idea of right to repair ends up becoming a real political economy question. What has happened to our ability, our right to repair these things?
I think over the past 30 years, there's been a really, really slow shift away from the open availability of schematics and documents and parts. And it's just been kind of this slow fade that we didn't really notice until it was too late. You know, as Steve Wozniak recently said, with the machines that he worked on in the 70s and 80s, they came with thick books and manuals that did the schematics and everything that you needed. And if there was a chip or something that broke in it, you could just find a vendor and be able to purchase it. And now you fast forward to 2021, if you buy one of the latest MacBook Pros and it stops charging because the Texas Instruments charging chip stopped working, I can't go to Texas Instruments and buy that chip. I can't go to Newark or Mouser or DigiKey and buy that because they have a restriction. They have an exclusivity agreement that bars me from being able to get that chip. So you're stuck now going to Apple paying $1,000 to $2,000 for that repair, and you're also not going to get any of your data off of the machine, even if you do pay them for the repair because they don't offer it. So it's one of these areas where the manufacturer is not interested in offering component level repair, but they're also putting in active measures to ensure that other people can't do it. And that's where I've tried to raise the alarm on this and showcase on my channel. These are repairs that we're competent to do, we're able to do, that we're able to save people money. Here is the specific way in which the manufacturer is going out of their way to ensure that that can't happen. And in my opinion, it's wrong.
I mean, they're not just going out of their way. I mean, this is part of their business strategy, right? I mean, they are creating. I don't know if this would be defined as a. I guess it's they're monopolizing. They're creating a monopsony on one end, and they're monopolizing the market for this, and it is one of those situations where it's not only costing consumers more, but it's also inhibiting people's ability to have shops that might repair this stuff. I mean, it has inhibitions throughout our entire economy.
Yeah, and I would like to try and propose the argument that what's happening here is actually a tie. They're tying the purchase of a repair service to the purchase of that product from that company. If you are going to make the device difficult to repair, fine. That's not something that I have an issue with. But when they go out of their way to ensure that even basic components that used to just a few years ago be openly available, not be available for fixing basic problems, at that point you are kind of tying the repair of the device to purchasing all of your services from that one company. Similar to what Kodak was doing in the late 80s and early 90s. And I hope to see the FTC start enforcing antitrust a little bit more here, which seems to be something that they've kind of fallen off the bandwagon with about over the last 5 to 10 years.
How much, I mean, has this been over the past 5 or 10 years, or is this, I mean, I'm coming at this from having, talked to a lot of people about antitrust over the years. And I think there was a lot of people who were surprised that, who don't pay attention to this stuff, who are surprised that Biden even made that an issue in his executive order. I mean, how much is your sense that there's a political movement out there that's associated with this, or has this been just something that you've come across because this is what you're doing as an individual?
I came across this because this is what I do as an individual. But it wasn't until I started doing these YouTube videos and I started visiting legislatures that I started to realize that it's everywhere. When I went to Nebraska to lobby on behalf of this, I was in a room with a bunch of farmers, and I thought, why are a bunch of farmers in here for a right to repair bill? I had no idea that this was an issue that affected them. When I went to New York, upstate to New York 3 years ago.
Wait a second. Explain to us how that does, because I don't think most people have that awareness either. How does it affect farmers?
If they want to repair their tractor, very often for certain issues, they're stuck going to the dealer. And if you have to go to a dealer during, let's say it's a crop season, again, I'm not a farmer, so this isn't my thing. So I may misstep here in some of my explanation. But from what I hear from them, if they need a repair done, they need to be able to do it within the next 1 or 2 or 3 hours. They can't go to a dealer where they have to arrange a tow because the nearest dealer is 30 or 40 miles away. So not only are they stuck paying for a tow and they need to repair, but they're also stuck dealing with the dealership. A lot of the limitations I talk about when I talk about not being able to repair Apple products, there's a lot of similarity there to what a lot of tractor companies, particularly John Deere, do, and a lot of the people that showed up there had identical complaints to me. It's just you cross out the word MacBook and you put in the word tractor. But
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is something where there were people in the medical industry fixing endoscopes that were showing up lobbying with me. There were people that wanted to be able to fix operating tables that were there saying, I can't get access to a $500 motor to a $30,000 operating table, and this is costing the hospital, over $30,000. This is something that's showing up in home appliances. So I didn't really know that this was something that was endemic to every corner of society. But it's something that I've been learning over the past few years, and I think more people are waking up to it and realizing they have the same problem as people in sister industries.
What other industries are there? I mean, with accepting that you have limitations, you may not, know exactly the issue that a farmer is going to face in that situation. But what other, when you're going around, like you see to other places, like where else have you traveled to advocate for this, and what other industries have you come across that this dynamic exists?
I've done this in Maine, Massachusetts, New York, Nebraska, Tennessee, and Washington and Maryland. And I've seen people show up that do appliance repair, medical device repair, tractor repair, and consumer electronics repair, camera repair, car repair. So when I first started out at this, I just thought it's difficult to repair Apple products because the company makes it difficult. And what I found over the past few years is that this is something it's kind of a cultural shift that we've made to where people have not really noticed it. People have not really noticed that most items that they buy are less repairable. And it's not just because they're getting smaller or more technical or more complex. It's because there are active restrictions that the manufacturers are placing on people being able to fix their own stuff.
And again, to be clear with people, this is a form of monopoly, and I mean, the downstream impact of this, I think, is clear. As a business owner who's running a business, trying to do a business, it's a problem. For the individual consumer, it's a problem. For for startups, it's a problem. It also just makes people less, it requires them to pay more money, to get these things fixed, and all sorts of productivity. In the case of the farmers, you only get a certain amount of time where the crop is ready to be harvested, or you can get your seeds in the ground, or, you don't want your hay ruined because it's raining, whatever it is. There's a clock on this. So, give me a sense of, like, prior to Biden issuing this executive order, which, we need to see the impact of it. But had there been any other organizations that you had come across when you were going to testify in these hearings? Were there broad movements that supported you? How did you end up getting there? Did you just someone write you and say, hey, we're doing this here, you might want to come, or what?
My friend Jessa Jones is friends with Gay Gordon Byrne from repair.org, and she said, you should come up and lobby with us. It'll be fun. But you're going to have to wear a tie. And we had an argument about wearing a tie for about a half hour, but I finally conceded. And we went up, and it was actually a lot of fun. And what got me hooked on it was when I went up to the New York State Legislature, there was this one gentleman there who said, when you repair a motherboard and you run a wire on it, or you replace this fuse or this chip, you're converting the MacBook into a PC and then misrepresenting it as a MacBook to your customers, and that's fraud. And this legislator that I talked to was at least 70 years old. He wasn't the most technically savvy. And I said, with all due respect, did you actually believe that? And he said, well, now I don't. And I said, why did you believe that? And he said, nobody showed up to tell me otherwise. Well, now that you did, you got a signature, you got a co-sponsor for your bill. And he signed it. And I thought, this is amazing. So I like the fact that the only way that this has gotten this bad is because nobody else shows up. Everybody is so cynical and so jaded with the political system that this is the level of difficulty they're playing on. Like, that's easy difficulty. They show up, they make something up that is insane. I think my face was turning red when I heard this with anger, and I tried to contain it just because it was so ridiculous. And since nobody is showing up, they're able to get away with that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay, I'll be the person in the room. Like, if nobody else is showing up, I'm not a political advocate, I'm not a social person, I don't know how any of this works, but somebody's got to show up, so I'll show up. And then I started showing up all around the country every time one of these bills happened. And the first time I showed up at one of them, the testimony that I heard was just kind of really disingenuous and ridiculous. And I thought, people should really hear what these lobbyists are saying so that we can have some change. So I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere, getting a bill passed that day. But I thought, let me just show up with my camera to show people what they're saying. That microwaves are going to explode, that phones are going to explode, that all this fear mongering. And that stuff really started to go viral online. People don't like listening to lobbyists lie to politicians to diminish their rights as a consumer.
So wait a second. So that 70-year-old lawmaker in New York State, he had been told this by lobbyists that you were essentially converting the Mac into a PC by soldering a certain part of the motherboard, and therefore you were misrepresenting. That's actually funny if it wasn't have such real world implications. And so this is basically and when you say one of these bills, you're talking about a right to repair bill.
Yeah, it's popped up in over 17 states across the country, and there are certain modifications for each individual state, but for the most part, all of them are based on the same template, which is almost a copy and paste of the Massachusetts automotive right to repair bill that passed in 2012.
I see. And is there a with these with the right to repair.org folks, who are sort of ostensibly like sort of lobbying for the right to repair, is there any sort of like broad strategy of if we allow for this right, let's say in New York State, which is a huge market, or maybe California, which is a huge market. I mean, we see this dynamic in the context of things like cafe standards in California. You know, if California puts on some type of standards, it ends up becoming nationwide because it's just more expensive to create cars for California separately than the rest of the country. Is there a dynamic like that there, or is it possible that you get a law passed? I mean, has a law passed in any of these states?
No, it gets shot down every time.
Okay, well, I guess that explains that. But were it to pass, let's say you already passed one in New York State, would we have a system where theoretically you can repair this if you're in New York, and Texas Instruments can sell you this if you're in New York? Or how do you get Texas Instruments, let's just say, and I'm just using Texas Instruments as an example. You brought them up. I don't know this dynamic, but Texas Instruments doesn't sell a certain transistor that you need for some electronic device. It can't because of their deal with Apple. Let's just say, again, I'm making this up. How do you get them to sell it to you, even if they're not restricted by Apple?
Well, the way that this would work in this type of globalized world, you cannot be able to sell a chip to someone in New York without that chip making its way everywhere else. So I wouldn't ask Texas Instruments or even Apple to sell me a chip directly. I would simply ask that these things be made available. And typically, Texas Instruments would sell to a distributor that then sells to a site like Mouser or DigiKey or Newark that then would sell to a retail schlub like me that only wants to buy 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 at a time. So if you make it so that that is available in New York, it's even if you only made it available in New York or only made it available in Massachusetts or Nebraska or Tennessee, somebody in that state is going to put up a website that says, here are chips that we have for sale, and they're going to be made available worldwide. Or if a schematic is made available in New York or Tennessee, that's going to get put somewhere and that's going to get shared. There's no way that you can have this passed in one region of the world, but not in other regions of the world. So at that point, they would have to decide, we're not going to sell to this state. Apple would have to decide that they are not going to want to sell MacBooks to two states with the most hipsters in the United States, or they're going to have to just stop being assholes. And what I would imagine would happen is they would stop being assholes. And that's what happened with the automotive right to repair bill in 2012. They're not even asking for the car to be designed differently in other states. They're just asking you to make this stuff available. And they just decided to make it available for every state and mechanics in every state rather than just Massachusetts.
Okay, so in the fallout for the 2012 Massachusetts bill, it ended up opening up all these markets.
Yeah, and the reason that this bill that we have is very much so based on the Massachusetts Automotive Right to Repair Bill is that you look at it 9 years later and there haven't been negative unintended consequences from it. So it's not like we're using a piece of radical untested legislation. You know, cars are not blowing up that didn't blow up before. Mechanics are not, stealing information from their customers and then showing up in their garages to beat them like the commercials were showing last year.
I just want to make sure that that's a cat that's attacking you and not like the specter of corporations who don't want this legislation to build.
Yeah. Yes, this is Mr. Clinton. I had him on a T-shirt that said schematics or die or fight for right to repair 5 years ago. He's a strong supporter.
So give us a sense of like what's happening with this fight. Like, I mean, what was the response? I mean, it's interesting because, we talk to people who are very political in nature, and this is you're coming at this from a different angle. It's literally you need to do this to you stumbled on the political dynamic as a function of trying to fix your computers essentially. What was the response within the community to Biden's announcement?
A lot of it was healthy skepticism because over the past 5 to 6 years, we've heard over and over again, we support what you're doing. Oh, I'll co-sponsor this bill, and something always winds up getting killed. So I'll be honest, there's just been a lot of healthy skepticism towards it. And for me, what I get out of this is that when I show up at a legislature, I don't have to hear, has the Attorney General said anything about this? Has the FTC said anything about this? I no longer have to just twiddle my thumbs and say, now I can say, the FTC released a 59-page 2-page report encouraging state legislatures to do something. In their report, they said that every excuse you've heard today from a lobbyist has no basis in evidence or fact, and Biden asked the FTC to look into creating rules. So now, the thing I've noticed about lots of legislators is that what pushes them to pass legislation is either, or not pass it, is A, that it will make their base happy, or B, a fear that they are going to have a rug pull moment when they pass a piece of legislation that is massively unpopular or unsupported. And a lot of the legislators I've spoke to, they hear my concerns and they want to help, but they say, has anybody else spoken on this issue? Because they don't want to be the one that's, sticking their neck out only to have it chopped off by getting in trouble with the federal government by passing something at the state level that they cannot enforce. And when Biden says, we're encouraging you to issue rules against anti-competitive restrictions on using independent repair shops, that really does put some wind under the wings of state legislators, and it may make them be a little bit less risk averse, which is going to be great when going up to lobby this session.
I imagine there hasn't been an opportunity where you could test out that theory, because it is fascinating to see the implications of the president just up there and do something that doesn't have an immediate effect, but empowers people who are activists like yourself to push, to leverage, basically gives you more leverage when you're going to do this. Have you been out there lobbying since that has occurred?
A lot of the states where these bills have been introduced have sessions that are going to be starting again in September or October. But I did get a call from the personal cell phone of a legislator in I don't want to say the state because I don't want to get it. I don't want the opposition to get started just yet. But he called and he bragged and he said, I passed more bills than anybody in the state, and I want to make this my project. Tell me how I can solve issue X, Y, and Z. And that was awesome. I had a 2-hour conversation with him. I have his personal cell phone number, and this really does seem to have gotten people to notice it. That this is something that if they stick their neck out, they're not going to get in trouble for it, and that a lot of people in there that are their voters would support. I am still going to be doing this across legislatures around the country. I'm not waiting for the FTC to do something, because if you look at this executive order, it covers non-competes, drug prices, internet bills, airline refunds, switching banks and taking your data, and meat processing. They have a lot of work to do. I'm not, right to repair isn't the list, and that's great, but there's a good chance of them not getting to it just with everything else they have on the list. So I am going to use this as leverage to try to get all of these state legislatures that have gone to it before that have said, I'm not really sure if we're going to get in trouble if we do this, and say, no, you're not. The FTC and the president both support you.
And to be clear, this legislation that you're pushing, the legislation you're pushing would have, like, it happened for cars in Massachusetts, but would yours be more universal, so that, let's say you pass a legislation in New York, it would help farmers? Well, there's a lot of farmers in New York, but farmers in Nebraska as well, with that same dynamic. In other words, would it be tractors? Would it be computers? Would it be cars? Would it be, how is that legislation framed? Like, how broadly does it cover, general products that need to be repaired?
It depends on the state. And there was some pushback in New York because this bill did not specifically exclude agriculture. So that got us some pushback because they think that this is too broad. So in other states, what they've done is they've tried to limit the bill to a specific field. This one's only consumer electronics. This one's only medical. This one's only agriculture. And in different states, we're trying different approaches to kind of see which one works and if any of them get pushed forward. And something that was kind of sad over the past year is that in both Nebraska and Montana, very farming heavy states, that they had agriculture only bills, so where they cut out the iPhone people and the medical people and the computer and the appliance people, and they said, we're just working on agriculture, and they were unable to get even that passed. And I'm really hoping that this changes it, because all of that not being able to get anywhere happened right before this report and executive order came out.
What have you guys? I'm just curious about this, just because you have a firm grasp on the strategy. What about going to a place where there's no agriculture lobby, where there's very little agriculture, and getting the farm bill, a farm equipment passed there, because there's less opposition, and then that place becomes, I don't know what state that would be that has the least amount of agriculture, but that state ends up being the hub for buying tractor schematics and supplying with tractor parts.
I have never thought of that, but it's something to consider. I got to ask A about that.
Oh, all right. Well, good. That would be great if that worked
I haven't
out.
spent as much time on the agriculture side just because, like, I know little to nothing about it. I know a lot about my specific section of consumer electronics. With agriculture, you know, like I've been to a farm once in my life.
I mean, it's just it's amazing because I think, like, you know, in those places where the need to right to repair is the most, one would imagine there's also the strongest lobby against it. But if there is a dynamic where certain states, where you know, once this information is available and the products are sold in one state, then you basically have let the cat out of the bag. I don't know. Maybe you go where there's as little need as possible. It becomes a very uncontroversial bill, but ends up making that state the hub of repairing for other states. I don't know if that works that way, but it's fascinating stuff. I'm curious, has it expanded? Has it changed your politics, your perspective on politics at all more broadly? I mean, and I have no idea what your politics were before this, but has it, are you seeing, are you more conscious of monopolistic practices in other places, in other sectors of our economy?
I think it changed my politics in two ways. It didn't change. First thing I noticed is that left versus right matters a lot less than I thought it did, because I have been laughed, and I have it on film, laughed out of legislatures by both people on the left and the right, and I've had people on both the left and the right co-sponsor bills and say, I'm going to go to bat for you. I don't care if I'm sticking my neck out. It really seems to be a difference between politicians that listen to their constituents and politicians that listen to lobbyists. And I've noticed that distinction much more clearly. That's what matters. Are you someone where, if a group of 10 people shows up to your office and explains something to you, you'll take the time to listen? Or are you only going to listen if they're showing up from CTA, Apple, or Google? That is a very clear distinction that I've noticed from the time that I've spent doing this. And in my YouTube comment section, I will see all the time the constant fighting between the two sides saying, of course, this is the side that's going to support it. No, that's the side that's going to support it. And in reality, I'll always have to remind them, that's not what it's about. You need to vote for someone that actually listens to you, that is open to like letting you in your office and letting you change their mind. And what I learned from it, as well as that, is that normal people, they actually have a bit more power than they think they do. They just don't use it because they're so cynical. And I don't blame people for being cynical, looking at the political landscape and how little things have changed in the direction people wanted to over the past 10 or 20 years. But when I could show up in an office completely unprepared, no script, never been to a legislature before, and get a legislator to just co-sponsor something that he was against it just before, that really changed it for me. It made me realize that normal people have a lot more say than they think they do if they actually start showing up. And it gave me a little bit of hope.
Well, that's great. How can people get involved in the right to repair, movement, I guess?
What I tell people is cultural should come before legislative. So what I try to do on my channel, I try to get people excited about being able to fix something that they own, being able to either save money, make money for themselves if they run a repair business, or just get that nice kick of dopamine when they actually see the fan spin or the screen come on. Because once you have someone who has that happy moment where the screen comes on after 2 hours of work, they'll be hooked and they'll support it. And for them to get other people in their lives involved. Legislatively, what they could do is you could go to a site like repair.org, see if there is a bill introduced in your state. If you put your address and your information in, it'll tell you who your legislators are, it'll tell you the bill numbers, and let them know that this is something that matters to you. Give them a call, give them an email. More of them are open to listening than most people think, and it does make a difference.
What is the breakdown that you've come across? If you had to say percentage, who are listening to corporate lobbyists versus the people who knock on their door, their constituents, give me some percentages.
That's a tough one. That is a difficult one. I honestly wouldn't be able to say. But
all right,
I have to think about it and come up with that. So I would give something that's fair. But I will say that it does seem to be changing in the direction of less of them listening to the lobbyists. The thing here that's important is that the American system, when it comes to politics, is set up for gridlock. It's very cautious. I would rather that nothing get done rather than something get done and it be bad. So it really doesn't take a large number of people listening to a corporate lobbyist for this to not pass. It only takes one or two people that to clog up the works at a particular area for nothing to get done. And that's what makes it so hard for us to get anything done, because we need to get such widespread support in such a short time period from so many different people. And there are times where, this person is becoming the ambassador to Ireland, or that person is moving on to a new position. We've had times this year and also 3 years ago in New York where we actually do have a champion for our bill, and then they get promoted to another position, and then they get replaced, and then you have to start from scratch convincing the new person of everything. So,
Louis Rossmann, real pleasure to talk to you. Owner, founder, Rossmann Repair Group, and you can check out his YouTube page. We'll put a link to that in our podcast and YouTube description. Thank you so much for your time today, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right, folks, quick break. We'll be right back. Wrap things up. All right, folks, that's it for us today. If you're watching us on Peacock, if you're not, we're going to be talking to Sean McElwee about the Nina Turner race, get his perspective on this. But if you're watching us on Peacock, we will see you tomorrow. And if you're not, stick around. We're going to head into the fun half, and we're going to get a sense of what went on in Ohio, what the problem or problems were. It has been a tough couple of months for progressive candidates, and we're gonna delve into that.
Dave Weigel had some good takes on his account, having followed the race. Basically saying that what were we gonna say?
Let's save it. Let's do it
Okay.
in the fun half. We'll go in and we'll go through all of those. Just want to remind people that your support makes this show possible. When you become a member at jointhemajority.report.com, you support the free show, and you get the fun half. Oh, and we have an announcement. Matt, can you pull up the AM Quickie newsletter?
Whoa.
Yes, very fancy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have developed a technology that allows us to take what we used to record in audio form and put it on paper, but it's not really paper. You can't, unless you print it out. It's actually,
which you would do,
which one could do. It allows us to email it to you. This is a technology that we have developed, and it allows us to email you these things. And here it is. It's the AM Quickie, the Majority Report. This is the first one that we put out. I know people are going to be bummed. They want the old memo from the desk of Sam Cedar, the format. Maybe we'll return that for a special one. But you can get this every day in your email box in the morning for free by signing up at majority.fm. I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you just put your name in for our email newsletter. We're never going to sell your email address. We're going to send these out in the morning, and we have really no intentions of then hitting your email ad box for, oh, and hey, guys, just checking in. And we may have other products, like email products that come from that, like whenever. I don't know but that's what it is for now. If you want this every morning in your inbox, do it. It's possible, late in the fall, we may do an audio product with it too. Who knows? But we will always allow you the opportunity to easily opt out if we do something like that. More often than not, it'll be opt-in, but this is you opting in to getting the new AM Quickie morning newsletter. Check it out.
Wow.
Sign up at majority.fm.
Wow.
You
That's
seem
me
really
hyping it
excited
up.
by it, Emma.
That's...
Really excited.
I'm having, yeah.
Don't
Hump
forget-
day.
What's that?
I don't know. Just move on.
Oh boy, Emma's really in a mood today. We have don't forget, check out Nomi's show. It is Wednesday. That means that it's youtube.com/the Nomi show. And I don't know who's on it. She didn't know. So how would I know?
Right.
But check out Nomi's show. Matt, what's happening in Cedar VCR Repairman? Please restart the AM Quickie podcast for those of us who are too lazy to read. We may do.
Throw it in a text-to-speech program.
Clown show Mike, and we might actually do that. That's actually something I've considered. How is it possible at this point that I can't create a text-to-speech with me? I have thousands of hours.
You definitely could. It's just paying probably for the program that can take the inputs and do the conversion.
That is it, man. That's going to happen. I don't know when that's going to happen, but at one point, that's like you're going to get the AM Quickie from me, and I'll be long gone. 200 years from now, Sam Cedar brings you the AM Quickie. 4 people are listening, but whatever. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian universe of media?
Ryan Pollack, IBEW member, is talking to David Griscom and I tonight, Left Reckoning at 8 Eastern, on getting union buy-in for climate action, particularly in Texas. And I'll also be discussing the new reporting on Tim Pool and his operation, also including how I'm trying to free his producer, I guess his name is Moonlord, who keeps trying to say things like basic reality, like he I don't want to get into it too much, but tonight we'll be talking to Tim Pool and sort of climate action. Left Reckoning, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get the
Wait a
post
second.
game.
You want a free what?
Tim Pool has a producer who keeps trying to say kind of things that are real. So he said
Right. I remember that. He's trying to talk him off the ledge in terms of, what was it, the Holocaust with vaccines, or?
It was the French Revolution recently, saying, well, what if the king's hoarding everything? And then he also did this thing where he said, when I criticize Trump, our fans seem to have a real big problem with it. And Tim Pool immediately was like, no, I don't think that's the case at all. And so I just think, stay strong, brother. We're both long hair boys now. And I'm gonna try to save him from Tim Pool, because I think Tim Pool
I see what you're doing.
I think he's trying to exploit Moonlord. So
I love it. All right, that's great. All right, folks, 646-257-3920 is the number. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Dinner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dinner.
Well, the problem with those is they're 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break. That's fucking nonsense.
See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back, folks. I've been busy reading takes about the Nina Turner race in Ohio. A couple of months ago, she was way up in the polls, and she lost last night by, I think the final tally I'm looking at about
6 points.
5.7 points or something like that. It's a loss, and really important, I think, for progressives to understand why there's this loss. And we're going to hear from voices, people I'm not particularly, like. There's a couple of people that we're not terribly thrilled about, but they were on the ground and have some good perspectives. But I also want to get a data sense on what happened. So I want to welcome to the program Sean McElwee. He is the what is your title, Sean? Aside from like
data wizard,
and you're in some type of like film noir thing here now. Like
what?
You're in like Shadow.
Oh, this is this is my room. I didn't realize it was going to be videotaped. I'm the executive director of Data for Progress.
You can turn off your camera if you're nervous about it.
Oh no, I'm proud. I'm proud.
All right. So
well, he's telling you should be nervous, I guess.
Those headphones also, those they never work. They never work. I should tell you right now. All right. So dude,
what's up, my friend?
We want to bring on the the biggest PMC we could find. And and what give us a sense of like, just like walk us through this race, okay? Like who are the constituents in Ohio 11th? Where was this race a couple of months ago? I want to start from there and then walk through this.
Yeah. So the Ohio 11th congressional district was vacated by Marcia Fudge. It's a majority Black district. The sort of main protagonists in this race are Chantel Brown, who was a local elected official. Then, of course, Nina Turner, who was a surrogate for Bernie in 2016 and 2020. So Chantel Brown, for the shape of the race was basically when Nina Turner entered, she had the most name ID. Early polling showed her at something like a 35-point lead. And you know, she was really leading sort of the fundraising And sort of what started to happen in the sort of last 2 months of the campaign was the sort of, you could say, Democratic establishment coalesced behind their sort of candidate, which was Shontel Brown. There were several other candidates in the race. None of them raised, more than a couple, like tens of thousands of dollars. None of them really ended up getting any sort of name ID of any relevance. There was an endorsement from Hillary Clinton, James Clyburn, who is sort of, I think, second in leadership in the sort of Democratic caucus, endorsed Shontel Brown along with the CBC. The CBC's political arm is led by Gregory Meeks, who's a New York
Congressional Black Caucus.
Yes, Congressional Black Caucus. And you also had large outside spending from DFMI, which is the Democratic Majority for Israel, or DMFI, which is Democratic Majority for Israel. They had spent previously in favor of Engel and against Jamal Bowman, and against Ilhan Omar when she faced a primary challenge. They spent about $2 million in the race. Third Way came in with about a 500,000 digital buy. Turner had some
Okay, no, hold on. Let me stop you. Let me stop you
favor.
here,
Oh yeah,
because I want because there's a couple of things that we need to address that I think ultimately will help us sort of assess this. First off, let's just start with putting aside for the moment. One was the candidate of the Democratic establishment. One was the candidate of sort of the growing left contingency in the Democratic Party. What and putting aside whatever that huge bottle or whatever it is you're drinking.
Oh yeah, this is my water.
You got a jumbo mug and a jumbo mason jar. It's like,
listen, it's good to drink
or you're
a lot
just
of water,
very
but
small, Sean. You're just very small.
How big is the? I mean, that is.
It's a pretty big bottle. Here's my phone. For
Oh my God, for
That's just the
size, for
opening.
scale.
All right.
Whoa.
Policy wise, though, there was a distinction policy wise, right? I mean, or was there? I mean, Brown, like, she's not for Medicare for all, right? How would you characterize her positions?
Yeah, I would say Brown is going to be like a fairly run-of-the-mill CBC member. I don't think she's going to ever be like a hardline progressive. She's ever going to be a sort of blue dog. Her main issue area, if you watch the ads, which I did, and we should talk about the ads, was gun violence prevention and basically working with Joe Biden. The sort of, she would say, I want to fight gun violence and work with Joe Biden to pass his agenda.
CBC.
I do not know.
Let's
if
just
she
also say,
supports
when you
Medicare
say
for all.
a run-of-the-mill CBC candidate, we're also talking, because Gregory Meeks, he's from Queens, and he is, I mean, very corporate friendly, to say the least. I mean, that's been my experience with him over the past 15. I mean, I remember him from 2005. Voting with some of the more corporate ideas of George Bush, right? I mean, he's full machine, right? He's also the Queens County Democratic Party chair, I think it is. And this guy's pretty. When you say run-of-the-mill CBC, this is the thing I think people don't necessarily always appreciate. Sort of a little corporatist.
Yeah, I would say, so I just looked at Shontel Brown's website. She does not, I don't see anywhere Medicare for all. Oh, wait. Oh, she said I wouldn't vote for Medicare for all if it came to that stuff. So she says in the site she's for Medicare for all. The district, by the way, is a very strong Medicare for all district. The thing is issues ended up not being like super the center of this campaign. It was really a sort of positioning relative to Biden. And Turner was not running a sort of like, I'm going to oppose Biden. It was something like a message, something like, I want to work with Biden, but I want to hold him accountable. And Brown's message was much more sort of like, I want to pass the Biden-Harris agenda. But yeah, I mean, the CBC ranges. There were very progressive members. Obviously, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar are members of the CBC, of course. But it tends to be fairly mainstream, fairly deferential to leadership, tends to sort of pick a couple of spots in each piece of legislation. And I would say, yes, tends to If there's going to be like pharma in the district, you'll have a member who has decent relationships with the pharma and can end up showing up in a sort of definitely difficult way on issues that are going to be relative to interest in their districts. Cedric Richmond, famously much more sympathetic to oil and gas than one might prefer of a Democrat. Because that's a powerful industry in Louisiana.
Oh, I just want to touch on one more thing too. You mentioned Bowman and who ran against Elliot Engel, and you mentioned Ilhan Omar. They were also targets of this Democratic Majority for Israel money. How did those expenditures stack up relative to the assets that they had? Just so we get a sense, because yes, there was a tremendous amount of money that was dumped in the last month, no doubt, and it all went up on air. But it wasn't like Turner didn't have the resources if the strategy was there to at least respond. I'm just trying to get a sense of, like, you know, why was Jamal Bowman able to survive that onslaught of money? Why was Ilhan Omar able to survive that onslaught of money? Was the onslaught materially different, or were there other issues at play?
Yeah, so I would have to go back and double check the specific amounts spent in each of these races. Turner was outspent for the last 5 weeks, if you combine the resources against her versus the IEs in favor of her and her campaign. You know, there's a little bit in terms of like campaign spending is somewhat more efficient. There are federal regulations requiring campaigns to get the lowest available rate. But yeah, by and large, I think one of the things that you're going to see in retrospectives of this was the Turner campaign probably spent too much money early on TV that should have been saved for the last moment, where rather than getting outspent the last 5 weeks. I would say that when you're looking at a campaign, you want to take into account several different environments. You want to take into account the paid media environment, but you also want to take into account the earned media environment. I think that's the really key thing that was defining about Bowman's race. The earned media environment for Jamal Bowman was much more favorable because Elliot Engel famously had the hot mic moment in which he was caught on the mic basically saying, I wouldn't be trying to, you know, speak here at this event if I wasn't facing a primary challenge. And this sort of fed into the narrative that he was old, out of touch with the district. He was obviously a white candidate in a district that had a very large Black population, large Black constituency. So I think each race is unique. And the other thing was the IEs, when they were attacking Bowman and Omar, those IEs both focus on the candidate's personal finances. So Jamal Bowman, they were like, oh, he's got like overpaid tickets and electricity bills and stuff like that, which just doesn't really resonate with voters. In the same thing with Ilhan Omar, they were sort of accusing her of malfeasance because her partner was a consultant who also advised her campaign. Her partner advises numerous campaigns. He's fairly prominent within progressive spaces. And I think both of those, you know, the IE can only be as effective as the message, and neither of those messages were effective. Whereas the message on Turner, that she sort of was not going to be loyal to the Democratic Party, was not going to be loyal to Biden, I think did speak to voters in this district. And I think
you talk about the fertile ground for, say, you know, Engel versus Bowman. That was such a gift to Bowman's campaign that he said that. I mean, honestly, if we're being real, it was a gift to Brown's campaign that Nina Turner said voting for Biden was like eating a bowl of shit, and did rallies for Jill Stein, which are things that aren't smart to do if you're trying to win a Democratic primary. Let's just be real about that. I mean, how much of those ad buys were focused on those two pieces of her history, and how effective do you think that was?
Yeah, so that was the main thrust of the IE message, was that she was not going to be a good Democrat. The IEs focused almost entirely on that. And they sort of, you know, they had a good message. They stuck with it. On the other hand, on the other side of the ledger, Chantel Brown had an ad that ran very early which actually included Marcia Fudge's mother. And I don't know if anyone has seen this ad, but basically, the Marcia Fudge's mother says, like, Marcia Fudge is now helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pass their agenda in the White House. She can't endorse in this race, but I can. And I think it pretty strongly implied that the sort of preference of Marcia Fudge was for her protege, as she was portrayed in the ad, Chantel Brown. So I think it is, yes. On the one hand, you had the Brown campaign able to make, I think, very effective ads that were moving. The IE was able to absolutely pummel Turner. And I think a really important note here is that because Turner did not have the same IE presence, Turner ended up running negative ads that had the I'm Nina Turner, I approve this message. Whereas the Chantel Brown negatives were from DFMI PAC. And it tends to be the case that you want to have the negative messaging coming from the IE and the positive messaging coming from the campaign. And so I think one lesson broadly that progressives could take from this is we actually do need to have super PAC outside spending, i.e. capacity. I know this is like, we're not supposed to like this. We're not supposed to want outside spending, but from a campaign tactical message, if the negative messages could have been coming from an IE instead of having to come from Turner's campaign, that would have been helpful for her because she would have been able to sort of have the campaign focus on the positive message, have the IE that doesn't have to say at the end of it, I'm Nina Turner and I approve this message.
And yeah, there's a piece in the Prospect about how, you know, so much of the PAC financing was helpful for Chantel Brown because, you know, Turner steered away from that out of principle, which I makes sense. But I mean, like, I think, you know, based on what I'm hearing, the heavily negative deluge of ads in the final weeks were incredibly impactful. Go on, Sam, but that's just
to be clear. So the negative ads that that Turner unleashed, that she had to basically put her name on, was about Brown's ethics problems, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what were the nature of those ethics problems? I mean, as they were presented, at least to the voters.
Yeah. So I know that one of the ads, I will say I do not know the deepest ins and outs of this race. I have had a lot of things that I've focused on, but I will say, yes. What I recall is, what I recall is that there was one about moving money to her boyfriend while she was on, I think it was like local city council or something like that. And then that was resulting in an ethics probe for possible impropriety spending. And then the other was that she had voted as a city council member to raise her pay, which I find to be somewhat less persuasive, and broadly think public officials should be paid more. But the other one was the more, I think, impactful one was the boyfriend contracts.
But it still was, again, Nina Turner's got to own the negative ads, whereas
Yes.
Brown did not have to own the negative ads in the same way.
Yes.
And the Brown negative ads towards Turner, outside expenditures, IEs, as you call them, independent expenditures. Okay, so the people just know that, but it's outside expenditures, was leveraging the fact that Joe Biden won this district by 30 points against Donald Trump. And she was just basically saying, I mean, how much of this, and I don't know if we'll ever have this data. You tell me if we will. How much of this was this sort of same dynamic on some level, obviously not exactly the same, but a similar dynamic to what happened to Sanders in like South Carolina? Like, how much of this was older Black folk? I mean, my understanding is that just from what I've read, or people eyeballing sort of the district, that Turner may have outperformed Brown in terms of Black folk, but Brown way overperformed Turner in terms of white folk, and that Turner did not run up the score in the areas that she was strongest. Maybe in part, is that in part because we have an age cohort situation where older people are like, I don't like somebody who says that Joe Biden's a bowl of shit, and the younger people are like, he sort of is. I mean, how much of that plays in?
Yeah, so I think this gets at the sort of meta narrative, which is I think you have two sort of broad stories here. One is that in the 2018 and 2020 cycles, this was following on the sort of footsteps of the establishment in the Democratic Party coalescing behind a candidate who lost to Donald Trump. And I think that made voters much more sympathetic to outsider candidates. And you had a number of primaries that were successful in that cycle. And I think the problem now is that, the establishment once again coalesced behind a candidate, and this time that candidate did beat Donald Trump. And voters on the Democratic side really do not like Donald Trump, and they really do like Joe Biden. And I think that is going to pose a sort of challenge for progressives. I don't think it's an insurmountable challenge. I believe that the progressive message has been, always should be, that what it means to be progressive is the full fulfillment of the actual Democratic Party values. And the Democratic Party often falls short of its values because of its fealty to corporate interests, corporate power. I will say I do think that the age thing is very important. I think you're right. I think that Nina Turner and Shontel Brown basically fought the Black vote to a draw. I think that was highly age polarized among Black voters. Older Black voters more preferring Shontel Brown, younger Black voters pretty overwhelmingly preferring Turner, which was also the case with Sanders. And Shontel Brown performed better with white voters. But ultimately, the most powerful predictor in this race of who you were voting for was age. And right now, we still have youth turnout is on the whole lower than older turnout. And if those numbers were not true, if young people and old people voted the same rate, Nina Turner would be the elected representative of Ohio's 11th. And so I do think you have a question of sort of like, when does this generational shift within the Democratic Party reach the sort of tipping point in which the sort of this cohort of very, very progressive young people who have been shaped by Occupy Wall Street, by the movement for Black Lives, by the insurrection, by the inability to beat Trump in 2016, by the climate crisis, when are they reaching sort of full voting age? And I think it's creeping up. The fact that this race was decided by 5 points, ultimately, that is still a very tight margin in a district that went very overwhelmingly for Biden. So I do think that the sort of future of the Democratic Party remains a progressive future. But I do think that we can also optimize our message and optimize our campaign tactics to hit 50% in districts like this, by which I mean we need to be more disciplined in terms of campaign spending.
Hold that thought, because I want to get back to that. But let's just stay here in this district for one moment. But I want to first ask you this. Do you have an idea when that cohort's going to happen? Will I be alive?
Sam, I actually think, how old are you again? You are older than you look. You look younger than you are.
Well, thank you. But my point is like, when are we going to get there? I mean, do we have enough data to really get a sense of like, hey man, 2026, that is it. It is over for the boomers. With all due respect to boomers, I am not a boomer, like people like pretend I am. But my generation, Gen X, is not so great either, to be honest with you. But are we how far away is that? And or is that something that we just? I mean, you can tell me in 10 years.
Yeah, no, I mean it's sort of what was it that the Justice Potter said about pornography? You know when you see it. Right. Like here's what I'll say. Like I think there's a couple of suggested signs here. Like if you look at New York City, which just had elections, city council, very, very young, very, very diverse, much more progressive than it's ever been before. Like we are starting to see the signals that this is starting to shift. And the fact, again, that this race, which was a Clinton district, Biden district, Turner came within, I think, 5 points. Like we are starting to see a shift, and it's going to be something that happens in shifts and starts. But I do think that the future of the Democratic Party is much more progressive, and it's going to be an iterative process. Like we are going to start seeing more and more races that come increasingly close before you finally break through. But this generation, I think it roughly starts with the Occupy Wall Street, maybe even Obama. It starts with sort of people who are mobilized to politics by Obama, by Occupy Wall Street. Those voters are starting to hit mid 30s, late 30s, 40s. That's when you start to see people really showing up to vote at high rates. And I think that those voters are starting to really enter prime voting years. And so I do think that the shift is already underway. And, you know, like the green shoots of that are the AOC race, which again, you know, happened more recently than we realize. And in the sort of grand scheme of politics, this is actually still a recent development, and it's a movement that's, I still think it's getting its sea legs. And it goes back to the campaign tactics I was talking about of just like starting to get disciplined on the paid, starting to get disciplined on the IE side. You know,
my understanding is too that there wasn't, you know, from reporting I've seen on the ground, that they missed their target for get out the vote doors knocked by 4,000 or 5,000. And let me ask you this: Nina Turner is running, or not, I don't know if she is, but this is a special election. It's filling in for a seat. The winner of this is only there. I think the actual election's in what, November?
Yes.
But they're only going to serve for a year. The election comes up again, term comes up again in another year. What are her chances of coming back in 2024? Right? I mean, she had some luggage going into this in terms of baggage. When you're going into you know, such a pro Biden district, you're going in with this dynamic. I don't know that she was conscious enough that this could come. I mean, it feels to me like there was a little bit of overconfidence a month and a half out, like, and you know, hard to blame somebody for like, hey, you got to be aware that there could be $2.5 million dropped on your head tomorrow. And it's all going to be focused on, you know, you're going to have billboards around where, you know, you're saying that Joe Biden's, you know, a bowl of shit. I mean, it's hard to anticipate that. And, you know, I think like, but, you know, fool me once or, you know, IE me once, shame on you, IE me twice, shame on me. If she comes back in the fall of next year, does she have you're going to have a slightly, you know, the electorate's going to move up. You're going to get a couple more, you know, you're also going to get people who are going to come out potentially voting, you know, against Republicans. And that may drive more youth turnout too, possibly, right? You tell me, does she have a shot if she comes back in a year?
I mean, look, it's going to be tough, Sam.
With Cori Bush, right?
Yeah, somewhat different circumstances there. I mean, I think it's going to be tough because Brown will have the opportunity to sort of, you know, she'll become a member of Congress. She will have the opportunity to start, you know, bringing home resources. You know, she will have all of the sort of benefits that come with incumbency. But here's what I say. You know, this is not the last congressional race. There are 435 seats. Demings has already retired. Elsie Hastings passed away. Eddie Bernice Johnson, we know, is going to retire. The progressive movement has a large number of opportunities coming up in this cycle. And if we take seriously the lessons from these races, if we take seriously the messaging lessons we can learn and the sort of tactical lessons, I think progressives can still have a good cycle. It's still very early. We have a year and change left to go. I think there's a lot of space.
All right. So the lessons there's some tactical lessons, right? You know, be ready for these big dumps of money, but is also is one of the lessons too, like, you know, if you're going to run in a Democratic primary, there are sort of like performative aesthetic things maybe that you can do that aren't necessarily a function of policy. I mean, it sounds to me like this race that people didn't care on, you know, that you know, Medicare for all or policy positions were just not as crucial to the cohort of people who voted in this race. And it was more just sort of like a broad sort of aesthetic.
Sam, you're describing the much maligned Sean McElwee normie progressive theory of change. Yes, like this is my view. I think that you need to approach this as, what I've always said about persuasion. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like the message from progressives, in my view, should be progressive values are the fulfillment of what the Democratic Party should be. We are the ones who really want to fight for the values that you have, fight for Joe Biden's agenda while Manchin and Sinema are putting on the chopping block. And I do think that those aesthetic shifts would be very effective. People who vote in Democratic primaries, remember, this district has probably 750,000 people, something around there. That's normally what a congressional district has. I think like 70,000 people voted. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
75,000 and 64, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, so it's about 10%, right, of the district. So we are talking about a very small set of people who are registered Democrat and show up a lot for primaries. And they have very positive views towards the Democratic Party. And I think that's what you have to take into account with this. And it's always, great to mobilize people. And I think, but we over rely on mobilizing relative to making sure the people who are going to turn out all the time, because they vote in every election, support you.
So that's the big lesson.
Yes, the Sean McElwee was right. Yes, that is my takeaway from this race, as it is of most races.
Well,
But,
there's a lot of people, that I'm reading that sort of agree with that basic concept. Is that to go in, and to start either, and I think and it seemed to me that Nina Turner made an effort through this race to appeal to those voters. The problem is that she didn't have the money at the time that it needed to be deployed to fend off the attacks that were sort of like low-hanging fruit. If I don't need to be a genius. If I want to alienate someone who is running in a Democratic primary from sort of those type of normie Democratic voters, I don't need to be a genius. If you've given me a quote where you say the Democratic president is bullshit.
Yeah, just let your, Matt was saying this, let your surrogates do that, right? You don't need to be the ones calling voting for Biden half a bowl of shit or whatever the case may be.
I also find a lot of insight in Mao. I said I also find a lot of insight in Mao.
In Mao? What?
I thought you said Mao.
Oh, Mao. No, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
What?
Matt.
Oh, Matt. Yeah, I guess Matt. Mao.
I was struggling to.
Sean, thank you so much. I appreciate you breaking this down for us.
Absolutely, Sam and Emma. You're both invited to the happy hour, as are the producers. Hope to see you there.
Which
I'm not quite full on. Is it outdoors?
Oh, it's indoors. I'll send you details. Sam, you should get the emails. You used to forward them around, but
I do get the emails. I just
I want to know about this.
Quite yet.
Okay.
Bye.
Can you guys give me Emma's email after and everybody's email?
This is not like this is not like a party line.
Oh wait, you just DM me.
It's not like
Sean.
Okay.
It's like okay. Bye, Sean.
Bye.
Jesus. What are you doing? For God's sakes. It's like Miles' party line. You guys gonna go to the turf? I'll see you at the turf. I just gotta tell my parents I'm not going to the turf.
Not the first time I've been confused for Mao today.
That gives you a little insight to what my daughter does.
I know, right?
So there it is. I mean, much of what Sean says. Wait, did you just jump in? Did you say something, Matt?
I said not the first time I've been confused for Mao today.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
I mean, to me, it seems like, how we talk about don't make religion the point of attack. To a certain extent, there's a lot of people who progressives needs votes from, who are sort of cultural mythological symbols to people. And to undo that, I agree with what Nina Turner said about Biden, but to undo that stuff in the course of a campaign is just not something a politician can do. That's like a long-term project. and it's not going to make, winning a primary easier.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why her ads in the final weeks, which she, I just want to cite this again because Dave Weigel was essentially saying, amazing that Turner watched the establishment candidates consolidate against Sanders and DMFI, Democratic Majority for Israel, pound him with negative ads, then had no effective fight back when this began to happen to her in OH-11. It wasn't enough at the 11th hour, which I think, at the time I tweeted, this seems a little like they're freaked out. Ads with images of her with Obama. That needed to be part of the equation from the get-go. I mean, she was up by 35 points at the outset. She really, it fell apart. And I think that had a lot to do with negative advertising that, Brown didn't have to own, as Sean was saying.
Let me just respond to this, IM, and it's an extension of what you're saying. Heather, IM, Sam, I think we all failed Nina Turner. To be honest, how many times have you featured her or interviewed her, talked about her policies? Maybe 1 or 2 videos at most in the last 2 months, compared to I don't know how many hours of talking about Republicans. Why not educate your viewers more and more about their candidates and their choices, policies, and how policies of her opponents are bad? Deep breakdowns, not touch and go features. I would put the number of people who voted for Brown in that race who watched this show, maybe in the double figures. Maybe we have, I'd be surprised if we have one, to be honest, one person. This race was not won or lost about policies.
Nope.
And broadly speaking, we try and educate Democrats, maybe some, maybe some conservatives, maybe some Republicans, maybe some, progressives about what, policies should be adopted. But this race was not about that. This is the thing, and Michael liked to say this quite a bit. It's about winning. It's about winning. And the idea that you may have to change some aesthetics to appeal to people, to sell them this. I mean, this is a job of a politician.
Also, I'm pretty sure her ads were on a lot of our videos for fundraising, and we also had her on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think but even if we had done nothing, the point is that it wouldn't have made a difference. The difference has to be that activists need to give space to politicians who are pursuing the same issue goals, has to give them space to appeal to those people who are voting on a different set of criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Not, that's the bottom line. The idea, this is,
activists don't need to lose their shit if she comes out with an ad like the one that she did in Too Late with Obama, with photos with Obama, seeing the larger goal and the tactics of winning to get her into power. And
I would argue a lot of those people are not actually activists.
Or
They're just people who are screaming.
Purists. They need to eat their own bowl of shit and say, no, this is the path to win.
Exactly. This is the problem, is that, and this is why, and he's just an obvious example, right? And I think by this point, Jimmy Dore was probably off the Nina Turner trip because of the aesthetics.
No, they were saying don't donate to her anymore on her show.
Right. So. Because they were upset about the aesthetics, right? And this is this is the problem. People are so concerned about identity politics because it's not dealing with the material impact on people. If you're concerned about the material impact on people, the idea that Nina Turner would even let's say she if she had to campaign with a cutout of Joe Biden that she was hugging every day, far more valuable to me for her to win doing that and having her vote on all these things. It's just this is little kiddie stuff. Honestly, it is childish. It is a 7-year-old boy saying like, I don't want to wear pink because that's a girl color. It's honestly, it's like that.
Yeah.
It's that it's that superficial and arrested and just and wrong. The point of politics is to get stuff done and deliver for people. And the point of progressive or leftist electoral politics, if there are people who would just say like, I'm not interested in the electoral process because I'm waiting for a bigger revolution and awareness, different conversation. But if you're going to get involved in electoral politics, the idea is win so that you can get power to provide material benefits for people. And I don't know if Nina Turner felt inhibited to go, to hug Obama, in 6 months out. She may have felt like that would have hurt her fundraising, but that's a problem if she did. I don't know that's the case, but we need to be able to give candidates some space. Now, I understand, like, well, sometimes it's hard to
And you
assess.
could have had a national strategy where you're focusing on your progressive bona fides and standing alongside AOC and standing alongside Bernie Sanders for your YouTube ads that encourage fundraising. And then on the local level on TV ads, just hammer what you did as a state senator, which I do think she tried to do, and how she worked with Obama, et cetera. I mean, we'll never know, right?
It's are performative, and I understand that, like, sometimes this is the way you get an assessment as to who this person is. But if you didn't have faith in Nina Turner before this, then I got news for you: you should not be really engaging in politics. Sometimes you're going to get burnt, but I mean, if you didn't, then it was quite clear how she was going to vote and what kind of voice she would have been in the House. Again, she could run in next November or a year from November. Maybe she wins. But the point is that, like, it is hard to win in the Democratic Party. And, I'm just going through, not somebody who I'm, for other reasons that I'm necessarily too excited about in any way platforming. But Jordan Sheridan was on the ground. And had a thread that I think was, a very sort of sober-minded assessment of the situation. Had she not run in the Democratic Party, but had she run in the Green Party, she would have lost by 50 points, not 5. And his assessment very similar to some of the things that Weigel said, some of the things that that McElwee said. I mean, the bottom line is you got to meet people where they are. And that doesn't mean that you need to change your policies. Sadly, people aren't necessarily always voting on the policies you want. I mean, part of this has to be like the job of politics is not to enlighten everyone and have them sort of like in lockstep with your perspective on this thing.
It's not punditry.
The job. What's that?
Not punditry.
Yeah, exactly. It is to deliver material benefits. Sometimes that happens, like, but with Cori Bush, using the fact that she's a congresswoman and sleeping on the Capitol steps, because Cori Bush, non-congresswoman sleeping on the Capitol steps, does nothing. Cori Bush, congresswoman sleeping on the Capitol steps, does something. Cori Bush sleeping on the Capitol steps, no squad, may not do much. Cori Bush sleeping on the Capitol steps with the backing of the squad and another way of making it, that does something. Cori Bush being able to go in and vote on a close vote, you have 3 votes, may help push something over the line, may help bring, I don't know, extend the child tax credit for 5 more years. $300 a kid to families, to, free community college, universal pre-K. These have material benefits. Having one more member of the squad would have been incredibly helpful. And
yeah, but I know, but that's exactly the problem, is that section of the left that you're talking about is not necessarily prioritizing, I think, those specific concerns. They see it more through an emotional lens of my team, and you're supposed to come to me. I have a criteria for what I want for a candidate, and if you don't come to me, then okay, you're not meeting my standard. As
And
opposed
it's all performative too, that criteria.
well, that too, because it changes based
yes,
on
it's all-
certain
it's all,
factors that are self-serving.
And look, I'm not talking about, those people that who articulate it that way. They're going off and doing their thing. They want to, start a third party. They're going to take their $12,000 that they've got saved up to promote their candidates, and they're going to spend it all 12 grand on whatever 110 candidates they're going to run, whatever it is. But I'm just talking other people out there who claim to be engaged in politics and want progressive change, and so that they understand how sort of facile and pathetic and moronic like that perspective is. All right, let's see. Warlord sneeze. As usual, Sean likes to ignore facts in favor of his own project, like everybody. The fact that he didn't talk about how the local party pushed the primary back shows how useless he can be. They may have done that, but you still have the issue of, like, they could have pushed it back, months and months, but they pushed it back because they wanted to give time for this money to be able to land these attacks on Nina Turner. But like I say, these are easy attacks to launch in this context. I mean, that's the thing that you have to absorb. Like, you can focus on the machinations that, look, every candidate that is going to go against the establishment going into it has to understand that the establishment is going to, if it takes pushing back the primary, they're going to do it. If it takes, dropping in $2.5 million against me, they're going to do it. There's no world where the voter going to the booth is going to give a crap about what the local party did to help the establishment candidate.
And there's no
that's just not going to happen.
There's no world where we get them to play fair and then we start doing stuff, right?
Exactly.
Like what world do you think we're living in, folks?
Exactly. Like, this is all baby whining. This is all like, it's not fair. She had a popsicle yesterday. Why does she get one today? I want 2 popsicles. No, dude, that's not what it's about. You're going to have to deal with the fact that power is not going to say, like, whoa, okay, we're going to play fair here. That's not going to work that way. So focus on how you win, not on how the other team is cutting corners. You're not going to like this World Series doesn't count because that pitcher, I saw him lick his finger too many times and he had some.
No, well, this World Series doesn't count because I'd rather be playing basketball. That's what it is.
India Walton, I think, is the model here. Like, you just de-emphasize everything that you would maybe hurt the activists that are supporting you about your disagreements with the main party, and you keep major things positive because that's what's attractive to people. Right?
Yes, and you outsource the more, pointed critiques of, say, Biden. Again, going back to the bullshit comment, you outsource that to your surrogates. You can have the people on your staff.
I don't
maybe
think she
making
said
those
that
kinds
while
of
she was
points.
running.
It doesn't matter though. She had political ambitions beyond that.
Right.
Beyond being chair of our revolution. So you're in a public space and you want to run for office eventually. You got to be a little more conscious of those things. But like, as we say, we're making these points
and come back in November. We'll see.
Yeah, we're making these points because we wanted her desperately to win, and thought that she was an excellent candidate.
I also think, like, the way that Chantel won the suburbs and Nina won Cleveland, like, there's a problem with how, like, that's when I think the Democrats are going to out-organize voter suppression. To me, it's like, oh, we'll be able to turn out our suburban folks.
Well, yeah, and Ohio has open primaries too, which I wonder how much of that played in based on what we're seeing in terms of Chantel Brown seizing a bit of that white vote versus what Nina Turner was able to get.
I think a very similar thing happened in the Louisiana district special where to replace Cedric Richmond, Karen Carter Peterson won most of the black vote, and the open primary, Troy Carter won most of the white suburbs and Republican voters to win that race. So this is unfortunately this is almost like a special election playbook for certain facets of the Democratic Party.
Just a follow up on that. Warlord is in New Jersey. My point was that Sean doesn't like to talk about the forces of capital and the establishment will move heaven and earth to stop any progressive challenge. Sean likes to pretend. Well, we take that as a granted, right? I mean, isn't that understood that they're going to fight? And if they, heaven and earth, you want to call it, but yeah, that they're going to do this. That's taken for granted. I think it should be. If you don't understand that, that if you challenge power, that power is going to do everything they can to stop you. That should be there. Sean likes to pretend that there is some sort of magical image of a progressive that can win. Well, it's not a magical image. We have models of it. Jamal Bowman, we have examples of it. If you don't think a progressive can win, then you should disengage from electoral politics. I mean, that's basically it. You should just recede into, nihilism.
Yeah.
But they're not going to win a progressive candidate is not going to win as a Green Party any more than, he's not going to have more opportunity if they're a Green Party member. I mean, what he's talking about, what McElwee is talking about is this is the best chance that you have. That doesn't mean that they're magic or that they're always going to win. This is the best chance. That's it. And look, you can tell that Nina Turner understood this dynamic when they started to deploy these Obama ads.
Yes.
She knew. She knew. It was a liability. Maybe didn't know how much. Emma knows corn. Keep India Walton in your minds because they're launching a massive writing campaign for Mayor Brown here, writing in from Buffalo. More signs going up than were here before the primary. Fascinating.
And just one thing about the Buffalo race, they're also trying to gut the mayoral powers to make it more of a city manager system because they don't want her to win either. But that's also to your point, Sam, that this will happen regardless. So you got to push forward no matter what.
Yep. Come shower with Crowder. The fact that Dem establishment put so much energy and money into sinking Nina's campaign shows how afraid they are of the potential change these candidates can bring. F. Jimmy Dore. Yes. They're not doing this because it's fun for them.
They like burning money.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 504 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Hold on. I got to raise your phone. You there? 504?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Will you hold on for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I just saw this IM that made me laugh. How many bananas can you eat, Sam? Emma, Matt, Bradley? 5? 50?
I had a half a banana this morning.
Yeah, what's the time period?
Yeah, that's too open-ended of a question. Okay, calling from a 504 area code. What is your name? Where are you calling from? How many bananas can you eat over the course of, let's say, 5 hours?
Hi, this is Oscar from New Orleans, and I don't know, maybe 5 if I had to guess off the top of my head. I don't know.
I don't think that's anything to be ashamed about. I think 5 bananas over the course of 5 hours, that's pretty impressive.
You don't want to OD on potassium.
What's on your mind?
Oh, hi. So a big fan of the show. I'm a DACA recipient, and I guess I had a question about the DREAM Act, and over the course of Biden administration's 4 years, if you see like any time that there might be a push for it, or I know COVID is on the top of priorities right now, but yeah, like if you see like any time, like I mean, like a certain point in these 4 years that they might push for it, or yeah.
My understanding is they are trying to figure out how they could put some form of like permanency for DACA recipients and open it up in the reconciliation bill. And I don't know that they've figured it out yet, but I know that they're working on it because they feel like this is going to be the last opportunity they have, right? Because there's not going to be any filibuster reform. So it's got to be something that goes into reconciliation. But that requires an argument or some form of illustration that that act will materially impact the federal budget. And again, the assessment of that is by the parliamentarian, which they have the ability to fire that person if they don't like the advice, or they don't have to follow that advice. So let me put it this way. It would be such a massive failure by the Biden administration to not, at the very least, and this is a very least scenario, to protect folks like yourself. DACA, I would say DAPA. I mean, I'm not saying that it would be that their job is done in terms of protecting immigrants or dealing with the question of immigration, but as a complete minimum, if they don't figure out a way to give folks like you permanent protection, it would be such a massive, devastating failure that I think they are highly motivated to figure out how they're going to get it done. In a way that they're probably not, they're probably more motivated on that topic than I would imagine. That's got to be a top 1 or 2 project for them in terms of how they would assess the success or failure of their administration. If they go into another election not having dealt with this, I think they're in big trouble. So that's the only thing I can tell you.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. And keep up the great work. Love the show.
All right. Appreciate the call. Thanks. Angry Xer says, Mike from PA went out to volunteer on Nina's campaign 2 weeks ago, and this morning went over some of the severe structural problems her campaign had. One low light was not knowing what to do with the volunteers, running out of call sheets, not having enough canvassing packets, bad get out the vote info, etc. There you have. Hey, let's check in on Asa Hutchinson, whose party has been denying, the danger of COVID, whose party has been in Arkansas. In fact, Asa Hutchinson, here's a funny story. So Asa Hutchinson, a couple of months ago, he signed some legislation that said you cannot, no municipality, state, nothing can have a mask mandate.
No masks
Arkansas.
in schools, no masks anywhere. We're done with this, and I'm a strong leader.
I'm a strong leader,
by my
and not
word.
only am I not going to issue a mask mandate, he says a couple of months ago, I'm not allowing anybody in any context to do that. It is an impingement upon freedom, except, here is Asa Hutchinson doing what we call the backup.
I signed it for those reasons, that our cases were at a low point. Everything has changed now. And yes, in hindsight, I wish that had not become law. But it is the law, and the only chance we have is either to amend it or for the courts to say that it has an unconstitutional foundation.
You know what would have been a great move for him back in the day when he signed this was to just have not signed it.
That would have been a great move.
Like, why would you need to sign a mask ban? I know it's performative; it's for his base. But like, you could have just
you said it. You just said it.
Yeah.
This is so masturbatory, and frankly, also, all the people who are not these right, wingers who, got to own the libs. That's what our whole point is as a party and an ideology. Own the libs. If it means that we're going to prevent people from protecting themselves. All those morons who are like, hey, man, like I saw a dude walking down the street wearing a mask, and it's like, come on, man, what's your problem? Like and I'm talking about, the really smart people on Twitter, the data analysts and the people who are like, I'm going to do some like amateur epidemiology here. And, people are being overly cautious. The cost associated with being overly cautious in certain terms of like wearing masks is so minimal. And the cost associated with seeing people wearing masks is beyond even measurable. It's so small. But yet a bunch of morons were like, it's just incomprehensible to me.
Like 1% of kids that get infected might have long COVID symptoms like weeks and weeks in advance. But, let's not be overcautious.
And I look, I look at my son and it sort of breaks my heart that the guy, like Saul will overwear masks. And occasionally I'll say to him like, hey, bud, you don't have to wear a mask. He goes, I want to. And I'm like, okay. We'll deal with when this is really, when there's absolutely no risk to him, or at least an incredibly minimal risk. Or when, then he'll start to take his mask off.
Right, but Sam, I mean, there's, on the one hand, you could see it as you raised a child with empathy. On the other hand, you're probably just a child abuser.
But
that's what they really think.
Yes, those people who think I'm a child abuser, they're effing morons. But the ones who also think are like, oh, it's just pandemic porn. That's why you keep, there's another group of people out there, I don't know who it is, like it was, sort of who are out there, on Twitter and whatnot, trying to make why are people, overestimating the danger here? Well, you know what? You coming out of a pandemic, you hope. Better safe than sorry. That's not a bad thing.
Also, it'd be one thing if there was like 50,000 deaths, but there's over 500,000. So that stuff is just completely bizarre to me, that especially people who had been downplaying this the entire time never told me up front that, hey, expect like 750,000 people ultimately to die in this country. But the big problem to emphasize is that we're overreacting to it.
It really is stunning. Here is let's talk about one of those a-holes who apparently, this is the beauty. Like if you're just doing a show and you're on the right, you don't, somehow you're able to sort of like ignore the fact that a guy like Asa Hutchinson, who signed what you as a right winger would perceive as like, sort of like signing the Magna Carta, which of course is the mask ban legislation in his state, and now wishing that he hadn't signed it. Here is Ben Shapiro. Now he's decided, I don't know why we should take any precautions for this.
By the way, this is after he came out and said that you should probably get vaccinated, or he came out with some pro-vaccine rhetoric. And so much like Sean Hannity, now that he's facing blowback, he's got to walk it back to
exactly
to CYA. Oh God.
Case counts don't matter. Hospitalizations and deaths matter. Even if hospitalizations get disconnected from deaths, hospitalizations don't matter as much as deaths do. Okay, so it used to be that case counts were really closely tied to death rate.
Pause it.
Now, thanks to the
pause it. First off, the idea that case counts don't matter in the context of a pandemic is absolutely absurd.
Long COVID affects between 10 and 30% of people who catch the virus, including those with mild or asymptomatic infections, according to experts, says the Wall Street Journal.
Correct. And as what does matter is the trend of case counts. If the trend is going up, that means more and more people are going to get it, and that is going to impact your hospitalizations and your deaths and your long COVID cases. and the opportunity for it to mutate into a Delta plus, which may be the thing that we're talking about 2 months from now or 4 months from now in this country. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The other thing is, I'll tell you why hospitalizations count. Because you can go to Arkansas now, or you can go to Louisiana.
Well, he said they
parts
count
of Florida.
To be fair, but
What's that?
he said hospitalizations and deaths count, not cases.
Oh, he just said we're going to go back because he then qualifies as hospitalizations don't count that much. You tell those to the people in Arkansas and Louisiana and Florida and maybe other places who can't go into the hospital because the hospital's filled up with COVID patients. And you start to get to the point where it's not just a question of beds, it's also a question of personnel. And you're exhausting our medical personnel with this stuff.
Yeah, tell that to the nurses and doctors that hospitalizations don't count.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't his wife a doctor?
And tell it to your, his wife. I wonder if she's practicing these days.
Yeah,
maybe
doubtful.
not. Maybe she needs to be called in on an emergency. But yeah, go back a little bit and listen to this guy just talk absolute nonsense. What a moron.
Connected deaths. Hospitalizations don't matter as much as deaths do. Okay, so it used to be that case counts were really, really closely tied to death rate. Now, thanks to the vaccine, that has been wildly disconnected to the point where 90% of all Americans above the age of 65 are now vaccinated against COVID-19, and 70% of all Americans above the age of 18 are vaccinated against COVID-19. And that is not including all of the people who didn't get vaccinated, who already had COVID-19, who probably have natural antibodies or T-cell memory, which means that in all likelihood, you are looking at an adult population in the United States above the age of 18, in excess of at least 75, maybe 80% of all of those people who already have some level of immunity to COVID-19. A very shrinking, diminishing percentage of the population is still highly vulnerable to COVID-19, which is why you have seen this wild disconnect between the case rates and the death rates. We are also seeing an increasing disconnect between hospitalization rates and death rates. Why? Well, because at the very beginning of the pandemic, everybody who went to the hospital was 80 years old and had 3 pre-existing conditions. Now, a lot of the people who are going to the hospital are 25 and have 1 pre-existing condition and are staying in the hospital for, say, 5 or 6 days and then getting out, as opposed to staying for 2 weeks and then dying. And you can see this in the death rates, because who cares about getting diagnosed with COVID if you end up with a mild cold? I'm seeing sheer panic out there today because, wow, Lindsey Graham announced that he had a breakthrough case of COVID and now he's going to self-quarantine for 10 days. So first of all, I am not even sure that it's worth quarantining if you have COVID at this point. Like it's so widespread that I'm not even sure, like on a public health level, whether quarantining is actually going to slow the spread in any significant. Like I get it. I get you're supposed to quarantine if you have COVID. I do. I understand why they're telling you to do this. Because there's so many unvaccinated people out there. But if
like this guy has the mind. I mean, this is unbelievable. Why does it help? You are contagious. The Delta variant, I mean, this is unbelievable that someone could articulate this. The Delta variant is even more contagious than the wild type COVID. If you are not quarantined and you are walking around with other people and going into places, you can give it to other people. If you are quarantined and you're not coming into contact with people, you can't give it to them. The concept of why you would quarantine with a highly contagious disease that we don't want to spread, even if you think like he does, that it has no impact on people, that you're in a hospital for 5 days, whatever.
Remember?
No biggie. Even if you believe that, to not understand the concept of why you would quarantine with a highly contagious is one of the dumbest things I could ever imagine somebody who fancies himself to be the king of the right-wing philosophers, the intellectual pillar of the right wing, to say. But
remember when Insane Clown Posse had that song where they're like, fucking magnets, how do they work? Like, at least that's actually like kind of a fair question. Like, how do viruses work? Like, we figured that out 400 years ago.
Well, he's trying to say that, the virus is so widespread that why do you even bother, right? Like, that's the whole argument.
Well, then why are case counts going up?
Well, exactly. The point. I mean, so he's trying to say that it's gotten so bad that we should just let it get as bad as it possibly could, because, you know, we've hit the bad threshold, and I am pretty sure that as long as we just let it run rampant, I mean, this is the herd immunity repackaged Delta variant remix that he's coming up with.
I guess that's what it is. I knew somebody who once told me that, like, you know, if you stop cleaning your apartment for 3 years, it really can't get any dirtier.
You know,
It's just
Sam?
not-
Totally
there's not
true.
enough dirt.
Yeah, I really thought about that anecdote you told us about right, like it hits a threshold of dust, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, it's kind of like
probably not true.
it's the same. It's the same situation, like how in the medieval ages they just wouldn't bathe because at some point you get so stinky that you hit a threshold, and you know you just keep on. Everyone just holds flowery claws to their noses as they walk by people. That's kind of the COVID situation that Shapiro's advocating for. Just don't bathe.
Here is Newsmax host Greg Kelly contemplating why people are trying to avoid getting COVID. It is because they want to go back into their house and party.
Look, I don't want to become like Australia, and I don't want to shut down again. You know, they deployed the military to keep people inside. It's so weird what's happening down there.
Pause it.
But here's
as opposed to deploying the military to assault
Go
peaceful
kill people.
protesters. Greg Kelly's all for that. Keep going.
Well, wait a second. Wait, I
Wait.
want to also add one thing here. Like, doesn't it ruin their narrative that, like, when they start talking about other countries having to shut down, doesn't it ruin their narrative like this is some type of like control mechanism? Or is it like control mechanism like the whole world's establishment is controlling all of our population?
Well, no, it
We're
fits
all
into
sheep.
it fits into the American exceptionalism they're trying to put forward, right? Like the fact that other countries are doing it shows why if we were to do it there, we'd be un-American and losing our freedom, etc. You know, Australia is such a scary place.
Indeed. All right, there we go. Let's hear.
military to keep people inside. It's so weird what's happening down there. But here's something else, and it is kind of weird, but it's also human. There are plenty of people in this country who would love to shut down again. They would love it. Do you remember the shutdown? A lot of people enjoyed it. Stayed inside, watched a lot of movies, got high, drank, whatever. Didn't have to go to work. There are a lot of people who look at that and say, wow, that might be fun again. Going to work is a drag. Nope. I know it's a drag, but it's a splendid drag. And we all have to fight this. We can't let that happen again. And I fear it's going that way.
Wait,
Splendid Drag is the name of my band.
Yeah, I wish.
A splendid
I wish I wasn't here.
drag. Yeah, gotta go Dre.
I wish there's Greg Kelly just wishing like, man, I just wish I could go get high and play some.
Also, pretty sure like most people that like drinking or getting high like to do it around other people. I don't know about you, but being high by myself is a little prone for paranoia.
Oh no, I don't like the social parts of it. I just like all the consumption partying.
Right. Partying should be a solo act, and there's plenty of people that think that way. Although I guess he's trying to portray like the left is just filled with junkies and takers, etc.
What do you do if you are the center of a state that is now hit peak COVID infections, and in some places you're starting to see your hospital system begin to creak a little bit under the weight of the hospitalizations? I'm asking, you're in Florida, and you're Senator Rick Scott. How would you possibly change the, this is at the Republic press conference at the U.S. Capitol on Tuesday. Here's how Rick Scott hopes to change the topic.
As I travel around Florida, I talk to families about the issues they deal with. The biggest issue they're dealing with now is inflation.
There you go.
That's what you're hearing about when you're talking to regular folks in Florida.
Yep.
That's I mean, it sounds like you might be just kind of frequenting donor dinners as opposed to maybe going to normal places in Florida, but sure.
let's take some. Geez. All right, we'll get time for like 2 or 3 more calls, and then we're gonna go. Calling from a 218 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 218.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Brady from Minnesota.
Brady from Minnesota. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you guys, get your thoughts on the October 15th general strike. Are you guys familiar?
Not familiar with it.
Okay. Well, I kind of first noticed it on TikTok in a really big way, and now I've kind of seen some people on Twitter talking about it. A lot of people seem to want to get involved, but I've kind of got some red flags with it. The people organizing it on the Discord server, they didn't even know what intersectionality is. There's also like the asks are kind of reformist, and there's kind of this conspiratorial. I'm sorry, my kid is. There's kind of this conspiratorial side of myself that wonders if this isn't some kind of op, because I feel like, with the labor shortage, there's something on its way already, and I kind of have a feeling that they're maybe trying to get ahead of things a little bit and kind of break our spirit when we see that nothing happens. Because we're not on the same page, and most people seem to think this is just a one-day thing, which won't accomplish anything.
I think a one day general strike across the country, if you had millions of people participate, I'm quite sure would do something. I haven't. I'm going to let you go because your kid is misbehaving, and I don't appreciate that. I'm joking, but I'll look into it. We'll look around to it. I wouldn't over analyze. The idea that I'm not sure why someone would be staging an op on with the general strike on October 15th. But I also have to tell you, and happy to promote it, and but it seems to me that there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you're convincing people to go on a general strike.
Yeah, and it's not on like the pamphlet content either. I don't really care what the ideas are. It is how many unions are signing up for this as well. That's the pretty much the first and last thing you need to sign on is what kind of coalitions are you building to actually involve yourself in this. Not really like is it reformist or whatever. If we could get the left as a whole to do a general strike, with like labor and stuff, I think that would be massive. But again, it's not, people put the ideas and stuff first, and it's about coalitions.
Let's go to 562 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling to? 562.
Hey, Mr. Cedar. I have just a quick kind of comment I want to make. I have previously been subscribed to your show, but since my politics continue to go further left, I don't have the patience to be a regular listener, but I occasionally do check in for interviews with the likes of Mr. Rossmann, who you just had, and the eviction video with Mr. Dayan. That was really informative.
Great.
I have also been a subscriber to the Jimmy Dore show. I hope you don't bleep that out or edit that out.
I will edit out the.
I can't hear him, by the way.
You can't hear him?
It's a little low.
Oh, all right. We start over again. You used to listen to the show on a regular basis, but you've moved to the left. But occasionally you check in for some of the interviews.
Right, and I also was a subscriber to Jimmy Dore show. I stopped due to his limited analysis. I'll only check in for certain guests like Chris Hedges, who wrote American Fascists, The Christian Right and the War on America, which is a must read. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump eventually opens up his own mega church. But that aside, I'm still a subscriber to Left Reckoning and love their appearance on This Is Revolution podcast. That was great. Now, I'm not really interested in wealthy old white man drama that you and Jimmy have, but I am interested in the influence you two, influence that you two have. Taking into this consideration, I find it completely repulsive that Dore will sit down with Tucker and won't call him out on his white supremacy. But I'm also uncomfortable with your financial relationship with corporate media that inherently promotes the status quo, which is founded on.
Let me ask you this: what do you think my relationship is with corporate media? Just out of curiosity.
Well, like I said, do enjoy some of your segments.
No,
but the
I'm
fact
not.
that
I
you're
don't
on
want. I'm not
Peacock
putting you
is-
on the defensive. I'm just honestly curious as to
Right.
what you think that is.
Well, the fact that you're on Peacock, I mean, they're not going to put somebody who's talking radically or challenging the, the status quo to any legitimate degree on Peacock. I think you're informative. I value what you put out, but it's not.
I will say this. I mean, I think. So I will say this. The argument that they have that you have is that they were aware of what my content was before they signed this deal, and B, that they actually pay attention to the content now. And I would suggest that I would say there's some truth. They certainly, I think, felt like they could trust me to go on there. But I will say this. It is an argument that is sort of consistent with the one we just made about Nina Turner, that I think that they probably weren't quite aware of what kind of stuff that that we put on this show, and that the fact that my presentation is such that it appears that I'm not doing stuff like that. But we have shown on Peacock, I've had guests who have said we should be engaged in sabotaging property for the sake of climate change. We have put interviews with the executive director of the union that is trying to unionize that company. We have every interview that you've ever tuned in for has played on that network, and they do not have, sort of bound by some confidentiality, but I don't know that I am with this aspect of it. They do not have any editorial control of the show. Now, there is an argument you could say, like, Cedar's so tame as it is, they don't need editorial control because they're not afraid that he's going to do something that they don't want. But I mean,
but I'm not sure how you could know that, though, caller, if you aren't really tuning in regularly anymore. I mean, I think that's a bit of a you're taking I just want you're taking the relationship between us and Peacock and then extrapolating from there without taking the content on its face and making a determination from that. So I mean, I don't think.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was a regular listener, mainly during the Brooks era. Once he launched his own show, that's kind of when I just stopped listening to this show. I'm very interested in international politics, revolutionary politics. Like I said, I'm just going further left. I check in for the minutia, which I appreciate. I'm thankful that you do make the space for more radical activists, but I don't think it'd be a character assassination to say that you are a bit more moderate in your approach, and I think you just hinted at it.
I think that's fair
with your aesthetics.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I was saying. I wasn't.
No, okay. I didn't mean that as an attack as much as I was just sort of curious as to what the perspective, what that relationship meant to you. But I hear you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, all right. This is where the criticism comes in.
What?
So this is where the criticism comes in.
Yeah, go ahead.
If Jimmy Dore said half of the anti-black, anti-indigenous, transphobic things that Ian Kaczynski, aka Vosh, has said, you'd be taking a headshot daily. Yet the online left, which includes the Serve, Crystal, and Kyle, and yourself, keep giving him, Vosh, who's essentially a silver spoon white guy, a pass every single time. The first time he was on the Tim Pool show, he pitched that reparations shouldn't be based on race, but class. And of course, Tim ate it up. Reparations should be for American descendants of slaves, no matter if they manage to escape poverty. Reparations needs to happen immediately and is a national issue. But time and time again, Vosh has, what the online left calls, let the mask slip. From the times that he uses the N-word to claiming that any trans person that disagrees with him has a mental illness, to more recent things like claiming that we can't get out of the Middle East without an exit strategy, which has been, the slogan for the industrial
let me
wartime
address,
place, right?
let me address this for a second.
Mhm.
I disagree with, obviously, with the idea that we need to tie reparations for descendants of slaves to class. I mean, we had Sandy Darity on, I don't know when it was.
Yeah, exactly.
A week or two.
No, yeah.
But you're also misunderstanding the nature of, and my understanding is that, that Vouch did do some edgelordy stuff, and I'm not, frankly, too up to speed on it. But I will tell you this: I used the N-word on Air America. I don't know what it was, 15 years ago, to make a point. I wouldn't do it today because I have a different, sort of, and it wasn't. I want to be clear on how I was using it then. I was using it to represent what someone had said at that time.
Exactly.
And so I'm not defending anybody's use of that word, and I wouldn't use it today, basically because, and I have to say that it's not a slam dunk for me. I think that, like, words must be taken in their context, but I also do appreciate the fact that it has certain connotations, particularly in today's day and age, that I wouldn't use it. But my arguments, but wait. I don't want to get sidetracked by this. My argument, the old white man arguments, the rich guy arguments between Jimmy and I are not on specific issue sets. And I want to make this clear. Like, I don't, there's things I disagree with a lot of people that I don't go after them about. The reason why I have a problem with Jimmy is I believe fundamentally, it's not a question of, like, he's got a bad take on this or a bad take on that. I don't even care. It is because his project, fundamentally and broadly speaking, is disempowering to the broad left. That's why. And that he's teaching people to be stupid. That's like his project. I'm not saying there's one issue or not two issues. Like, we may agree on virtually every issue.
I don't think that's the case, but that's the point, is the overarching theme of what that project is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not taking apart specific takes. Like, I've never seen a second of Vouch's show. I know him from Twitter. Like, I mean, so I'm not going to be able to remark on his takes specifically, but I'm aware that his project is not that of Jimmy Dore's.
And broadly speaking, I mean, I will mock right wingers, their takes on stuff, because this show is designed in many respects. One of the functions of the show is to literally just mock the right. And Jimmy Dore was the first person, I think, that I ever even contemplated beginning to mock on the left, when it became clear to me that the guy was basically literally teaching his audience how to be stupid about politics. So it's like, like, there may be takes that Vouch has, or that, that Kyle Kalinske has, or that,
Pac-Man.
I don't, who? That Pac-Man has, or others, I don't know.
TYT, whatever.
TYT, or the Rational National, or, I don't want to leave anybody out here. I mean, that takes I disagree with. I don't know, but that's not, I'm not, people can make that assessment on their own. What I'm trying to do, the reason why I get into these old man fights with Jimmy Dore is because I think
wealthy white old man.
Well, these wealthy white man old man fights is because I think he fundamentally undercuts the policies that he purports to espouse, and he undercuts the left in this country. In addition, I think to, now he's even more reprehensible in that I think he's empowering, white nationalism, frankly. And so when people cross that threshold, that's where I pay attention to it. But I'm not policing every person on the left.
No.
And, people have disagreements about Vouch, but that's, up to them. That's good.
No, but here's the issue is that I have the same approach to Vouch that you have for Jimmy Dore in regards that due to his context, which I used to follow, I subscribe to anybody who's a leftist, and then I watch their videos throughout time and determine whether or not I'll continue to watch their product, right? Let me just finish. I didn't interrupt. Let me just finish, please. So I feel that Vaush's context is inherently anti-left in the sense that he does this whole thing that unfortunately Ms. Vigeland has done the same thing. We're trying to associate this mythical red-brown alliance, right? And the issue that I have with that is the Reds were the reason why we're not all Browns, right? Like what's going on here, there is no alliance there, right? If you're further to the left and you're a communist anarchist, you're not going to associate with fascists, right? So that is my main issue with Vaush, is that I feel that, and I've seen his work enough to determine that the way that he goes about his politics is anybody to the left of him is immediately labeled a Nazi, right? And to me, I will make the same argument that you're making towards Dore that I do towards Vaush.
Well, then
also, I didn't even say that. No, but I mean, characterize my position. I said that that's something Dore is trying to promote and create. I don't think that's a viable thing that actually can exist, a red-brown alliance. That's my position.
Well, I don't think it's a thing that is, though.
Listen, we can debate that, but here's what my suggestion would be if you have that issue with Vaush, is on your show, you should make that case.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm not. Oh, come on. Because I'll be honest with you. Listen, I'm watching people. Listen. I'm watching people who identify. Now, you could argue that it's impossible for there to be a left-brown alliance, and that may be the case. But self-identified lefties who go on, on Twitter, on social media, they are making common cause with fascistic people. There's just simply no doubt about that. Now, you may say, well, it's definitionally impossible, to be the case because no one who is genuinely a lefty would do that. Fine. But there are people who self-identify that way who are making common cause with those people. Now, that is the nature of that narrow disagreement. And that is why I'm not going to take up your banner in that instance, against anybody who makes that claim. Now, there may be some nuance to that argument that I think is wrong, which I just said, self-identified. But there are people who are doing it.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sorry. There are people who are doing it. And so, it's self-identified.
Exactly?
But the argument you're making is just I don't know what to tell you. And that's your agenda. People are telling me what I should be doing on the show. I'm quite explicit with what the project is here. I'm sorry that it doesn't conform to the exact show that you want to hear, but I would encourage you. I would encourage you to if that's the most important hill that you think is out there, that when Vaush says red brown, he should really be saying self-identified red brown.
Well, no, the issue is fundamentally that I think Vaush is a white nationalist, and he's proven to be that with liberal linguistics, right?
Well, that's all right. I don't pay that much attention, but send me clips.
White men are not held to the same accountability as other people.
Send me clips.
Right? They're constantly given.
Hey, dude.
I would encourage you and your audience to search on YouTube Scorpio.
No,
Vaush, and yes.
We're not this online, man. We don't know what you're talking about.
Search Scorpio Vaush.
No.
There it is. I gotta go.
Scorpio.
I'm gonna go.
Oh, all
right. I gave you 16 minutes. You want people to search Scorpio Vaush? There it is.
Yeah, I mean,
search Scorpio Vaush. I mean, honestly, this is so sniggly. And here's a guy who's I don't even listen to the show anymore, but I want to tell you what you should be doing.
I have an opinion, though.
Yeah,
yes.
please reproduce my opinion.
It's fine for people not to listen to the show, but I mean, honestly, give me a break.
Please reproduce my opinion about a show that you guys don't watch. We don't have time. We make 5 shows a week. We're not also going on to consume YouTube content.
No, we're also not combing through Vaush's old history because
send me, majority reporters. You want to send us content that you think that we should be doing, send away.
Here, I'll just say this to Vaush. Don't use Red Brown Alliance anymore. Stop labeling these people communists. You're going to piss off communists. They're not Reds. And use a different way to describe that would be my advice.
Why didn't you do that before we took that 15-minute call at the end of the show? We got to wrap it up now because I got to go. I apologize, everyone. That was a mistake on my part. I honestly got to go. I got to 10 minutes.
We've got to do some content for Peacock.
No, yeah, exactly. I get exactly.
Wait, seriously.
And there's a lot of people in the IMs. Callers, we have no more time. I'm sorry. Let me read some of these IMs. Cower the Crowder vouches white nationalists. He regularly shits on Nazis, which because of idiots like this caller, Vouch has to explain it's satire. The dude is a dud. Ultimately, you got to go say F yourself. Vouch uses a lot of satire, which the caller doesn't understand. Thing the caller doesn't realize about Vouch is this: notoriety it gives him is what he's enabled his skyrocketing in views. Misha together. That last caller lied about Vouch's position, says Prairie Fire Kowalski. Vouch is hated by the anti-pragmatic left. Vouch is more entertaining focused like Left Reckoning, and MR is more informative focused. Vouch literally holds MR in high regard as the best online news source. Caller also lied about the N-word thing. Bad look, but in context, not a big deal. And transposition is just wrong. Don't want to be a Vouch stan, but his stuff is entertaining and bringing people left, especially younger people. Most of all the critiques of Vouch, caller stated, have been retracted by Vouch. Says Teacher J.
He also was wrong about my position on Red Brown Alliance, which I don't think
he was. He wasn't talking about yours. He was talking.
But
about
no, he
Vouch's.
said me. Yeah. It was me mocking Jimmy Dore's position on that and his project, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
he's seeing the tweet that Jimmy put up on on his show about me and on the Twitter report, right? So,
congressional baseball fan. Hello, Mr. Cedar. I'm calling in to complain about all the other MR fans who are not as great as fans of me. And here's the 12 rules of life as to why. Eppo says Vouch is not satire. Mulsanti says, I have a red-brown alliance going on. It's called constipation. All right, I'm going to read 10 more of these IMs, and then we're going to get out of here. I apologize, folks. We're working on trying to get a little more flexibility to keep the show going a little bit longer these days, but we'll work on that. The Sport Report. What can we learn from the Nina campaign is the need to appeal to normie Dem voters more. This doesn't mean giving up progressive agenda. It means like we need to position ourselves as anti-Biden's agenda. It just means we need to position our opponents as anti-Biden's agenda. Like Chantel takes dark money, so will she be a reliable vote for the Democratic Party? It's what Cori Bush did against Clay. I think Nina tried to strike the balance of unabashed progressive and Dem team player, but she had too much baggage with her past no-filter sound bites. She needs to make that appeal even harder because of her past. I think that's true. And that IM came in at the beginning of the show. Almond Silk. I'm on SSI, and I am in that yearly Trump review right now. Again, my SSI is $197 a month. Thank you for this quick interview. We're going to do more with Matthew. Sam, my sister had a baby boy last week. Can I get a shofar for the new little dude? Yes, you can. Here it is. Benny boy, it's actually text PSLOAE to 50409 to get info on the SSI bill, not the sign. All right, will you check that out, Bradley, and just make sure that we have it right? PSLOAE. PSLOAE. I'm not sure what that is. And hopefully that person's not doing something, jerkish. Sad man. Hello, ML crew. This has been a real head scratcher for me. When you, Emma, and Matt are in the office at the same time, you are both looking at Matt when he's talking. Emma is looking a bit to the right, and you, Sam, are looking to the left. This is not possible. Since Emma is sitting to the right of you, please help out. I've had sleepless nights over this. I did not pass geometry class. We mess with the eyesight, the line of sight all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yard sign, enjoy. Home Depot now showcasing power tools that won't work if they're shoplifted, need to be activated at point of sale. First step towards requiring a monthly subscription service to change your own batteries. Oh, Jesus.
God.
That's horrible. Horrible. All right, 3 more. The American Party. I'm an IT worker and a socialist. I've been subscribed to Rossmann for years. Louis is a petty bourgeois, diet conservative. But I look at him as an example of how someone's political alignment can be made less relevant when their interests are up against the interests of large corporate entities, and in effect, they are in alignment with the more progressive forces class struggle. The worker capitalist antagonism has primacy over the left-right dynamic. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, his politics are, I don't really know them except for in this very narrow context. And I did get the sense that, like, I wouldn't necessarily love some of them, but if there's an alignment here, that's pretty good. And his other politics, I don't know how, it would depend on how bad they are, but I don't imagine that they're that bad. Jimmy Carter Solar Co., the state of Rhode Island has a no big ag equipment supply, i.e. John Deere or any equipment suppliers. They were all consolidated out of existence in the 90s. So by extension, there's no AG equipment lobby in the State House. Pass right to repair in Rhode Island. I hope that they do that strategy because I think that's a pretty good strategy. All right, the final IM of the day. Let's see here. Any chance of the timing of Biden's call for Cuomo to resign is planned to distract from Cori Bush's protesting the end of the eviction moratorium? I doubt that. I think it has more to do with making sure that Biden is not subjected to the same criticism. I don't know. And to be clear, I don't think that I don't think there's the evidence that he engaged in that type of stuff. But like I think when Cuomo put out that, like, look at me kissing, hugging, everybody thing. Oh, we didn't play that video. We'll do it tomorrow. All right, folks. See you, Matt, Bradley, Emma. Great job today. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and